The Met Office for GB News. Things are turning much milder now in the run-up to Christmas. Often quite a bit of cloud around, some outbreaks of rain. The rain mainly reserved, though, for the northwest of the UK. Looking at things in more detail for today now, though, and plenty of sunshine across the south and east of the UK. That sunshine turning a bit hazy this afternoon as cloud starts to increase from the west. And that cloud thick enough across many northern and western spots for outbreaks of rain to gradually work their way in as we go through the day. 1 or 2 heavy bursts developing across Northern Ireland and across Irish Sea areas later on. Turning milder out towards the west here, temperatures this afternoon up to 8 or 9 degrees. Still quite chilly, though, towards the east and southeast at 4 to 6 Celsius. As we head into the latter stages of the day, we hold on to a lot of cloud across the north of the UK, quite a bit of hill fog around, some outbreaks of rain at times too, so quite a murky end of the day here. But notice temperatures starting to climb up to, across western spots, so up to 8 or 9 Celsius. Quite a cloudy, murky picture too across Northern Ireland, spits and spots of rain around, but temperatures here up to around 10 or 11 Celsius by this stage in the day. Quite murky across many other western spots again, bits and pieces of rain blowing through the air at times, whereas towards the southeast it's still mostly dry here, and there'll be some clear weather to end the day. Milder, though, cloudy and rather damp weather works its way in across all parts as we go through the evening into the start of Christmas Eve. So a pretty murky, grey picture to start Christmas Eve. Outbreaks of rain mainly reserved for the northwest there. Elsewhere, mostly dry, but as I say, quite cloudy. And with a cloud around, a bit of a breeze too. It stays much milder than recent nights. Certainly a frost-free picture as we go into Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve itself, though, does look pretty grey. A lot of low cloud around, again, some hill fog in places. Mostly dry away from the northwest where we'll see outbreaks of rain at times. But again, a pretty murky picture. Temperatures very mild, though. Temperatures widely into double figures, peaking during the course of the afternoon up at around 12, even locally 13 Celsius. 13 is into the mid-50s in Fahrenheit, several degrees above where they should be for the time of year.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The BBC has been branded jaw-achingly stupid, not by me, by the way, over its decision to cast black and ethnic minority actors in the historical drama of Wolf Hall. Now, is this a forward-thinking idea or nonsense? Are we rewriting history? Henry, I mean, the Tudors were real-life people. They were pretty much white.
Well, some of these shows depart so much from historical context anyway that maybe it doesn't make any difference. But I think just generally we've got a problem in this country with portraying history in its correct sense. You can't change history. And I think it's about the motivation. If the motivation is to sort of to make a political point, then I think it's wrong.
What I find kind of tedious about people finding this instant jaw-droppingly stupid, Jesus was portrayed by somebody who's half Slovak and half Irish. Moses was portrayed in the Exodus by an Englishman. So, you know, same with Anne Boleyn, you know, was portrayed by Natalie Portman, who is Jewish. So if this is the one thing that's getting people angry, then there's something deeper within that rage, because I think Hollywood's been doing that, where people...
When you say something deeper, do you think there is a hidden racism and people are complaining about this?
Well, I think for some, maybe yes. I can't speak for everybody because this news dropped today. I don't know why they are thinking that it's egregious, but there absolutely must be some underlying racism if this is the only one that you're upset about.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Merry Christmas, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 23rd of December. I'm Emily Carver.
I'm Charlie Peters.
Well, tributes pour in for the 9-year-old victim of the Christmas market attack in Germany. 3 days on, what do we know about the suspect's motives? Mark White will bring us more.
And business leaders have warned that our economy is heading for the worst of all worlds as the economy flatlines. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, has said that better days are ahead.
We start from a disappointing set of economic statistics as we end 2024, but that's why we're going to fight every day to make sure that we improve the lives of working people across this country.
On the way to a Rachel Reeves recession. In other news, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is confronted by an angry pensioner whilst handing out mince pies in her West Yorkshire constituency.
That is so two-faced, getting a mince pie out.
Yeah. It's a nice tradition.
No. Give him a blanket, because they're freezing to death. It's freezing.
Well, it's lovely to be back in the studio with you, Charlie.
Absolutely. Festively themed. You know, I think we've got the highest number of... Yeah, you've done your bit.
I've done my bit.
I still
you look very smart, though, and smart is good.
Yeah.
Smart is good.
I'll take that.
Huge amounts to talk about today.
Yes,
we've got recession on the cards.
Yes.
It does appear that there's a lot of confusion with regard to the suspect in the German Christmas market attack, what exactly his motivations were. Seems like he was prolific on social media.
Yeah, lots to draw out from that. Lots of question marks for the German security establishment as well. Their links with Saudi Arabia, or lack of links, we should say, with the kingdom, potentially causing concerns there. We're also going to be talking about a big victory for Reform UK, with Rupert Lowe, their MP, getting the DWP, the Department of Work and Pensions, to release some really important data on foreign nationals claiming benefits. This is data that the government collects, that they just don't release to the public. So lots of information to come out of there. And we'll also be asking, what more data are they holding back that we need to know?
Yes. I mean, Rupert Lowe has been a sort of one-man band on this. He's been pressing for data on all sorts of different issues, mostly to do with non-UK residents and benefits and crime data and all of that stuff. But surely the British people have a right to know this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's important stuff. And on that topic of information coming out into the public, we're also going to be going through the question about barbershops up and down the country. Now, a new investigation has found that 6,000 new barbershops and beauty salons have sprung up since 2019. What's behind that? Because there's some concern from the police that some of these places are being used for laundering money, which is a bit...
I don't know, maybe the demand has suddenly exploded exponentially, you know. Men aren't cutting their own hair anymore.
Yeah.
They're all going for these fancy, I don't know, whatever you call them, the hot
shave, the towel shave.
I'm not sure it's that. We'll get to the bottom of it, though, this show.
Yes, we'll work it out by 3
Let us know if it's like that on your high street.
Yes.
It certainly is near where I am.
Yeah, be keen to know that. And you can send all your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. You'll be looking forward to reading them out throughout the programme. But first, let's have your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after midday. The top story this hour, well, the UK economy flatlined in the third quarter of the year, with GDP showing no growth between July and September, according to revised figures out earlier today. The Office for National Statistics partly blamed weaker trading in bars and restaurants, while businesses warned the country is headed for the worst of all worlds, they say, amid fears of reduced output and hiring. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the economic challenges are huge, but vows her budget will deliver growth in the long term. But the Conservatives claim Labour's policies have tanked growth. Well, the Shadow Culture Secretary Stuart Andrews spoke to us earlier this morning on GB News, and he's been pointing the finger at the Labour government and warned that a recession is increasingly likely if their policies continue.
This is a really worrying time. They talk down the economy, so it's no wonder that confidence is falling, but then they made some disastrous decisions in the budget, not least the national insurance contributions hike, which is having a real impact on confidence for businesses and what they were thinking about for their future and any investments that they were thinking for growth. And then, I obviously work very closely with charities, for example, and they are facing a significant hike in their national insurance contributions bill, totaling about £1.4 billion.
A suspected arson attack has caused a large fire in Birmingham today. Police say a car was deliberately set alight and rammed into a shop building in Spark Hill early this morning, with residents describing the explosion as sounding like a bomb going off. The blaze later spread to flats above the shop, prompting evacuations. Thankfully, though, no injuries have been reported so far. Fire crews battled the flames with 10 fire engines, bringing the situation now under control. West Midlands Police are urging anyone with information to come forward as their investigations continue. Shop staff are facing a Christmas crime wave, with nearly 700 shoplifting offences each day going unsolved over the past year. New figures show 38% rise in unsolved cases since 2019, with more than half closed without identifying a suspect. The Liberal Democrats are warning the trend leaves shop workers vulnerable during the festive season. Morrisons has apologised after a system glitch caused chaos for shoppers earlier, with loyalty discounts failing and Christmas deliveries cancelled. Customers reported their More Card savings didn't apply at tills, and some deliveries or click and collect orders were running late on one of the busiest shopping days of the year. The supermarket's website also experienced outages. Morrisons has said, though, it is offering a 10% discount in store for affected shoppers and is manually processing loyalty vouchers. The NHS is urging families to watch for signs of dementia as they gather this Christmas, with diagnoses in England hitting a record 500,000 people. Symptoms for forgetfulness, confusion about time and place, and struggling with conversations could be some early warning signs. The Care Minister, Stephen Kinnock, says an early diagnosis is vital for accessing treatment and support. The Alzheimer's Society also says 1 million people are living with dementia in the UK, but a third remain undiagnosed. That's as dementia was the UK's leading cause of death last year, with over 75,000 people dying from the disease. And the UK's most expensive street of 2024 has been named, but if you're dreaming of living there, well, you'll need some very deep pockets. Homes in Knightsbridge average £21.4 million. The central London hotspot is closely followed by Ilchester Place in Kensington, coming in at £19.4 million, and Grosvenor Square at £19 million. Lloyds Bank says London still dominates the priciest streets list, but outside the capital, East Road in Weybridge is the costliest at just over £8 million. What a bargain. Those are the latest headlines. For now, I'll be back with you in half an hour.
OK, welcome back. It is now 12:07. You're watching Merry Christmas Britain. Now, tributes are flooding in for the 9-year-old boy, Andre Gleisner, who's been named as the youngest victim in the German Christmas market attack.
Talking to social media, his mother called him my little teddy bear and said that he would always live on in our hearts.
Yes, the attack has left 5 dead and over 200 injured, with some remaining in a critical condition.
And that's come as the Alternative for Germany protesters have prepared to march near the scene of the attack, with German authorities coming under fire after warnings about the suspects were reportedly received last year but deemed unspecific. Well, joining us in the studio now is our Home Affairs and Security Editor, Mark White. Talk us through these links that the German security agencies are suggested to have had at that stage.
Well, each day, actually, we're getting more in the way of information on the background of this man, Taleb Abdel Mohsen, who came to Germany in 2006 from Saudi Arabia, claimed asylum. He was eventually granted asylum under Angela Merkel in 2016. But during that time, he came it seems, to the attention of the authorities over threats that he made to local government department in 2013, apparently over the level of benefits that he was receiving as a refugee at that point. And according to German authorities, had made a specific threat about carrying out an act that would gain international attention, and apparently specifically referenced the Boston Marathon bombing. Now, as a result of that, officials from the German government, particularly de-radicalisation experts, had spoken to this man. They deemed him not to be a significant threat. I believe he was fined for that incident with this local government department. But then going forward, there were multiple other occasions when the Saudi government contacted the Germans, sent diplomatic cables about this man, describing him as extremist in his viewpoint, and saying that they wanted him extradited to Saudi Arabia. That was not acted upon by the German governments, despite repeated cables that came from the Saudis. And he, as I say, was granted asylum in 2016. And then we fast forward to just last year when authorities were alerted again by a concerned member of the public because of postings on social media about potentially causing harm to the German people. So it seems there were multiple occasions when the German authorities may have been in a position to act, to do something, to more closely examine this individual and the threats that he posed. But for whatever reason, they were either not acted on or very little in the way of action was carried out.
And we've heard this before. Authorities,
so
many times. Now, over the weekend and since the attack, there have been many competing claims about the potential motivations of this suspect, also conflicting evidence. And of course, as we know, social media is always live with speculation. What's the latest we know as to his potential motivation?
Well, it seems he was an activist, that he was very anti the regime in Saudi Arabia. He's been described variously as anti-Islamist in his viewpoint. Now, that might well be true, but I think a lot of that really doesn't matter to many of the population in Germany, who are very concerned at what they see is uncontrolled mass migration and the potential risks that that brings in taking people into the country, granting them asylum and not really having a handle on who they are, what their background is and the potential threats that they pose. We've seen it in this country, we've seen it in many other countries in Europe where asylum seekers that have come, that have been granted asylum or not granted asylum, have gone on and committed some atrocious acts. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that people who've been born and bred in a country don't go off and commit atrocious attacks as well. Of course they do. But the issues around, in particular, in inviting, as they have done in Germany, not just this 1.2 million, it's many more than that now, in the year since Angela Merkel opened the doors to mass migration and asylum seeking from Syria in particular, there has been real concern. And this does fit into that category, whether you get caught up in the he's Islamist, he's anti-Islamist, whatever. He is certainly someone who was an asylum seeker taken in, given the protection of the state, who then turned upon his adopted country in the most horrific way.
An appalling situation, Mark, but we're also seeing we've got this protest lined up by the AfD, the right-wing party, very anti-immigration, very concerned about a lot of the situation that's been going on in Germany in recent years with refugees starting a lot of these attacks. Have you seen a significant shift in the political rhetoric from some of the more establishment parties and politicians since this attack over the weekend? Does that mark a sort of a general change that's taking place in Germany?
Yes, and in Germany and elsewhere, of course, you've got more mainstream parties that seem to be more sceptical in the way in which they talk about the whole issue around immigration, and they acknowledge, to an extent, the very real concerns that are being expressed by the public not just in Germany, but elsewhere in Europe, and of course here in the UK. We saw an awful lot of that after the Southport stabbings and the concerns that were being expressed in many communities over mass and uncontrolled migration, which manifested, of course, in quite violent protests at that time. So there are, you know, politicians would have to be living in some kind of bunker not to be alive to the issues that many people have. And that's why you're seeing parties on the right in Germany gaining traction. You know, we've had the elections being brought forward to early in the new year, and they may well do very well in those elections, according to the opinion polls, because they are voicing what I mentioned just before is a growing concern in countries like Germany at what they see as uncontrolled migration and the potential security threats that brings.
And I'm sure we'll be bringing live coverage of that protest from the scene of the attack a little later on in the afternoon. Mark, for now, thank you very much indeed. Mark White, our Home and Security editor. We are also going to be talking to a journalist a little bit later who's out in Berlin, I believe, who's been writing about some communication he had in the past with the suspect and some of the odd behaviour,
yes,
perhaps, as well as some of the security flaws as well.
Yeah, well, one of the questions they have to explain, I think, the German authorities, is what's caused this potential rift with the Saudi security agencies. A lot of people saying that actually, since the Khashoggi incident, 6 years ago or so, lots of Western intelligence agencies have just sort of distanced their relationship with the Saudis. Could this spark a realignment of that relationship? People thinking, actually, we need to take these guys seriously. We're missing key information, which could put our people at risk.
Now, we don't want to depress you further, but the latest GDP figures have been released this morning, and guess what they show? They show the UK economy flatlined in the third quarter, GDP stagnated, 0.0% growth between July and September, revised down from the estimate of 0.1% growth, down from 0.5% in Q2. Sorry, that's a lot of figures. Essentially, things are stagnating.
It's not great.
No.
Well, speaking this morning, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, had this to say.
So look, this Labour government is going into 2025 with absolute resolve to work with investors, wealth creators and workers across the country to stimulate economic growth and improve living standards for workers across the country. This is our number one mission as a government, and we start from a disappointing set of economic statistics as we end 2024. But that's why we're going to fight every day to make sure that we improve the lives of working people across this country.
OK, when's that growth going to start? Shall we speak to the Director of Popular Conservatism, Mark Littleward? Mark, the paper's saying that this is a Rachel Reeves recession, is it?
Emily, yes, I'm afraid it is. I mean, you know, Merry Christmas to the two of you and all of your
Got my
GBNews.
festive dress on.
A stagflation.
It's a bit like a lump of coal in your stocking for Christmas, really. We should be unsurprised. We've just heard from the Chief Secretary to the Treasury there that we're going to fight every day for businesses and investment and working people. Well, I don't want them to fight. I want them to actually put some sensible policies in place. And essentially, what we've seen from the Labour government thus far is they've taken all the things that the Conservatives got wrong, namely increasing the burden on businesses, hiking tax and hiking regulation, and they've doubled down on it. And if you double down on a bad strategy, you'd expect things to be twice as bad. So I think there's now every possibility we're going to dip into recession. Some people have called this the nightmare before Christmas, but you know what, Emily? It's worse than that. This is going to be the nightmare during Christmas and a nightmare 2025 if we're not very careful, because the underlying Labour economic strategy is to take resources from the productive private sector and transfer them to the considerably less productive public sector. And if you do that, growth falls. And that's what we're witnessing. And there seems to me no sign that they are going to pivot away from that strategy. So all things equal, things will only get worse, I'm afraid.
Well, Mark, over the weekend, Rachel Reeves did seek to reassure the public, saying that this economic turnaround will take some time. But I thought it was very interesting that she used some of her spaces in the weekend papers to take on reform, saying that Nigel Farage hasn't got a clue. Do you think that that criticism might look a little bit empty at the moment, considering her results after 6 months?
It shows that the Labour Party are worried about the rise of reform, and rightly so. I mean, my understanding, I'm not a member of the Reform Party, but my understanding is that their broad thrust of trying to get growth going would be to reduce the size of the state somewhat and lower taxes and the burden on business. And I would say that is broadly the right recipe. You might want to go line by line through their particular policies, or those of the Conservative Party, who are still developing their policies at the Kemi Badenoch. But both of those parties, the Conservatives and the Reform, I think are going to give a direction of travel that if you want growth, you need a rather smaller state sector and a rather bigger private sector. And we're already hearing warnings from groups like the CBI. I mean, I'm always a bit sceptical about economic forecasts. Anything could happen. But they were expecting the private sector to be somewhat strangled in the weeks and months to come, that hiring is, basically grinding to a halt. Pay rises are unlikely because the burden on businesses is increasing. So it's very, very grim reading. She might get lucky. We might get lucky. Let's suppose there's a boom in America, for example, once Trump becomes president. Well, we might catch some of that over here, but no thanks to the actual decisions and policies presently being pursued by the government, which, far from increasing growth, are almost certain to dampen it. And guess what? That's exactly what we're seeing 6 months into this Labour government.
I mean, I remember speaking to a number of small business owners at the time of the budget, and there was a sort of... They looked at it, they heard what Rachel Reeves had to say, they were worried, but the attitude was, we can make this work. We're going to keep going, we're not going to let this damage our positivity too much, optimism, small businesses, backbone of the country, we need to keep going. But then you're hearing of layoffs, you're hearing of hiring freezes, you're hearing of people putting off expansion plans. I mean, the data shows people are not, the businesses are not being boosted, Mark.
That's right. But it's also fair to say they are keeping going, right? We are stagnating, we're flatlining. So it's just that we're not growing. So, bless them, the entrepreneurs of Britain, who with ever more burdens put on their shoulders are having to navigate a way through. And I'm rather surprised that they're doing so at the comparatively good figure of 0% growth. I mean, I fear we'll be in negative figures before long. So the keep calm and carry on attitude seems to be working in the private sector as much as you can expect. But that's hardly a laser focus on growth, of actually building and growing these businesses, making it easier for these small businesses not just to carry on, but to hire a few more workers, to produce a few more products, to take a few more services to market. Not much of that's happening. We are just flatlining, and that is the opposite of a strategy for growth. And despite the fact that Labour ministers always mouth those words, growth is, we're going to fight for it and all of the rest of it, it's all a bit skin deep, because when you actually ask them how they think they're going to bring it about, credible answers come there none.
Mark, just very quickly, you mentioned how the arrival of Trump could lead to a boon in Britain as well. Is that through the so-called Brit shoring, this idea that because our salaries are so much worse than theirs, that a surging American economy will mean that bosses in the States will say, oh, let's get all our HR and legal work done in London where it's cheaper? It's not actually from any trade, just because we're essentially poorer than them that we benefit when they surge.
Well, I mean, the two economies are quite closely linked. Similarly, if Europe got out of its slump, that would be good news for the UK. So that might be one element of it. Of course, the danger might be that we start to experience a bit of a brain drain, that more successful Brits in the private sector think, well, hang on a second, if I do this job in Austin, Texas, or in New York, or in California, or in Wisconsin, you know what? I'll be 50, 60, 70% better off. So you might see a brain drain. But generally speaking, if the American economy does well, there's all sorts of ways that it benefits us. They'll buy more British products, more Americans will come here on holiday, and all of the rest of it. But, if that does happen, it should be the Trump administration that we thank for that, not Rachel Keir Starmer. But they might just catch a lucky wind. It's possible.
OK, well, Mark Littlewood, thank you very much indeed. Have a fabulous Christmas if we don't speak before. How depressing. Are we now a source of cheap labour?
Yeah, I feel like we're a colony of the US economy, which is pretty moody. But there we go. Well, this is Merry Christmas, Britain on GB News. Coming up next, the Home Secretary. She was confronted by an angry pensioner while handing out mince pies in her West Yorkshire constituency. It's quite the clip. We'll see you after the break.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Our next guest has a rather unique career story. She was working at a pub aged 18 and Holly Farmer was spotted by a modelling scout and it turned out to be her lucky day.
Scott Yoz-Clark sent this message to Holly.
Holly, 18, 5'10", she does not belong in a pub. And I absolutely love that, Holly, because it's a bit like Dirty Dancing, where it's like, you can't put baby in the corner. Holly does not belong in a pub. You belong on the catwalk. What was that moment like for you when you were scouted by Yoz?
It was crazy. I have to say I wasn't expecting it, to be honest. Like, I was just on my lunch break. I was working at a pub, so... yeah, I was on my lunch break walking, going to Primark and...
You're going to Primark?
Got stopped by yours.
And how did that interaction go?
Well, first question was, how tall are you? So, 5'10".
Very much that.
Yeah, then he gave me his card and asked, like, explained everything, that he's a model scout, obviously.
Yeah, because generally when I scout, especially when I get close to that person, I tend to look in their eyes, and when you see something there, it's like everything works on the face and then the eyes gives you away.
Well, you've spotted a gem in Holly. I mean, you can tell even when you walked in, you are built to be a model.
I did my first fashion week here in London and then went to Paris and it was really fun.
Wow.
Now it's my full-time job. It's a bit crazy, to be honest, to be able to say that modelling is my full-time job now. Some brands will ask you to be a bit more serious and then others not
So it depends on the client's request as well. Ellie, give us your best model face, ready? 3, I wonder if we can come back. 3, 2, 1. Very nice.
High fashion. Yeah. But you guys do all, like, contorted moves, don't you?
Yeah.
Like, all this high fashion. Do yours?
I'm just permanently living in model
you actually
model
are,
world.
though. He actually
This
does.
is it. GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Merry Christmas, Britain. It's 12:27. Now, the Prime Minister has had a call with the Ukrainian President Zelensky. A Downing Street spokesperson said the Prime Minister spoke to Volodymyr Zelensky this morning. The Prime Minister began by updating on his recent discussions with international counterparts, including at the meeting of the Joint Expeditionary Force in Estonia.
JEF members were united in their determination to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position going into 2025, the Prime Minister said. At the summit, the group underscored the importance of matching their words with concrete action, including through further sanctions on the Shadow Fleet, the acceleration of lethal aid and support from the Ukrainian Defence Industrial Base, the Prime Minister added.
Now, President Zelensky has reflected on the situation on the front line in Ukraine and the need to ensure his country could degrade Russian forces for the long haul. Now, what happens in Ukraine, he says, in the coming weeks and months matters to NATO and Europe, and it was vital that President Putin's ambitions fail in Ukraine, the leaders agreed. They also discussed Operation Interflex, which is the UK-led training mission for Ukrainian recruits, and agreed on the importance of refining its offer to further bolster Ukraine's ability on the battlefield. The leaders, they said, look forward to speaking again soon.
OK, so this is the breaking news that the Prime Minister has had a call with President Zelensky, and clearly they spoke about quite a few matters there. Sorry for the very long statement that we just read out. We will bring you some highlights as well from that call a little bit on. But shall we move on?
Let's do that, because the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has been confronted over the withdrawal of the winter fuel allowance by an angry pensioner while handing out mince pies in her West Yorkshire constituency. Let's watch the tape.
The thing is, you betrayed everything that everybody voted for you for, in everything. 12 smashing gangs, loads of rubbish, you know it, and you're going to house a load of them around here. We know you are. We know your plans.
Well, actually, do you know we're already...
Waspy.
Yeah, we are already cutting the asylum hotels.
What about when you got that photo done and all that with Waspy women?
Yeah, we are already...
Changed your mind with that?
We are already cutting the asylum hotels.
You know, you've got more.
No, we've actually been cutting them. We just announced the next 7 has been cut.
And now you're going to try and stop people on donating. Everything's like changing.
Yeah.
You'll not get in next time with that. Good luck to you. That is so two-faced. Getting a mince pie out.
Yeah. It's a nice tradition.
No. Give him a blanket. They're freezing to death. It's freezing about.
Right, OK, so there's quite a lot of anger out there by the looks of things. Joining us now is political commentator Jonathan Liss. Jonathan, a difficult time to be a Labour cabinet minister by the looks of things.
I mean, I think that was quite unfair on Yvette Cooper, to be honest. She's been handing out mince pies in her constituency for 20 years. It's a nice Christmas gesture. The woman's complaint from the article that I read accompanying this was that why are you handing out mince pies when you could be handing out blankets? I mean, these politicians, can't cut a break. They can't get anything right for some people. And also, it should be pointed out, Emily, that woman is, I read, a committed Reform UK supporter. I think maybe even a member. So I think that should be taken into context. That Yvette Cooper will have opponents, as all MPs, constituency MPs will have. I think it's a great virtue of our system that cabinet ministers feel safe enough to actually go out in their communities and engage with local people. That doesn't happen in many other countries, and we've seen 2 MPs in the last few years literally been murdered. So I think it's a great thing, and I would hate that to stop. And I think that, it's absolutely reasonable for this woman to have her opinions and to express them. But I think it's quite churlish the way she went about it. And at the end, Yvette Cooper wished her a lovely Christmas. And so I hope you have a lovely Christmas. The woman said, I hope you don't. And I think that tells you what you need to know, really.
Jonathan, I mean, comparing what's just happened there in any way to MPs being murdered.
No, I didn't compare it.
Extreme, but raising it in the context, I'll just finish the question. That's a touch extreme, is it not? I mean, politicians need to be able to hear the anger and concerns of members of public, and I don't think it's reasonable to bring up the sort of serious security threats with this, which is just an angry member of public, quite rightly, raising some of the concerns they have.
I never suggested for a second this would pose a threat to Yvette Cooper. I said that in the current climate, I think it's a great virtue of our system that MPs, in particular senior MPs and cabinet ministers, feel able to go out in their communities and listen to people. And if you listen to the clip, Yvette Cooper didn't just ignore her, she did engage with her, but the woman was clearly angry and not prepared to listen. I think it's reasonable to point out that MPs do worry for their security in going to meet their constituents, having seen 2 of their number literally been assassinated in the last few years. Many other countries, many other democratic countries in the world, you would not see a senior minister like the Home Secretary go out and about in their community.
Well, I mean, I think you tried to sort of maybe... you spoke about how this person may well be a Reform voter or a Reform Party member. I don't know that. But does she not have a point, this woman? Are Labour not acting in rather a two-faced manner, whether it's about the winter fuel payments, whether it's about the WASPy women, whether it's about all matter of things?
Emily, I think that the issues that the woman seemed to have was that Yvette Cooper was handing out mince pies as she's been handing out in her constituency for 20 years. Now, if the point is that because Labour has done something that a lot of pensioners disagree with, that Labour shouldn't do anything good for anyone ever, then that's a slightly strange argument to pursue, I would suggest. If she was doing something nice, it's just that we can take it on its own terms. We can wish our opponents a happy Christmas and offer a nice little gift, and that can be all it is. And we can still have our political disagreements that we can have at all other times of the year.
OK, well, Jonathan Liss, thank you very much indeed, political commentator. I do take the point that obviously people shouldn't be going around shouting at people, even if they are very angry about government policy. But I think, Yeah,
personally, I wouldn't want to see an MP right now. I've had enough negative political news for the year. I think I just want to be with my family for Christmas. But there we go. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain. Well, it's Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. There's lots more coming up on today's show. We've got a story about Rupert Lowe, the Reform MP, revealing some pretty interesting data from the DWP. That's up after the news with Sam Francis.
Charlie, Emily, thank you very much. Good afternoon to you. It's just after 12:30. The UK economy flatlined in the third quarter of this year, with GDP showing no growth between July and September, according to revised figures. The Office for National Statistics partly blamed weaker trading in bars and restaurants, while businesses warn the country is headed for the worst of all worlds, amid fears of reduced output and hiring. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the economic challenges are huge, but vowed that her budget will deliver growth in the long term. But the Conservatives claim Labour's policies have tanked growth. A suspected arson attack has caused a large fire in Birmingham. Police say a car was deliberately set alight and rammed into a shop building in Spark Hill early this morning, with residents there describing the explosion as a sound like a bomb going off. The blaze spread to the flats above the shop, prompting evacuations. Thankfully, though, no injuries have been reported. Fire crews battled the flames with 10 fire engines and have now brought the situation under control. West Midlands Police are now urging anyone with information to come forward as their investigations continue. Shop staff are facing a Christmas crime wave, with almost 700 shoplifting offences every day going unsolved over the past year. New figures show a 38% rise in unsolved cases since 2019, with more than half of closed cases without identifying a suspect. The Liberal Democrats are warning the trend leaves shop workers vulnerable during their busiest season. Morrison's has apologised after a system glitch earlier today caused chaos for shoppers, with loyalty discounts failing and some Christmas deliveries being cancelled. Customers reported their More Card savings didn't apply at tills, and some deliveries or click and collect orders were running late on one of the busiest shopping days of the year. The supermarket's website also experienced some outages. And breaking royal news for you, we're just hearing reports in the Telegraph that King Charles will be delivering this year's Christmas message from the Fitzrovia Chapel, a former hospital chapel in central London. It's the first time in over a decade that speech isn't recorded at a royal residence, with the King choosing the location to highlight healthcare workers and to foster unity between different faiths. Well, the ornate 19th century chapel was once part of the Middlesex Hospital and now hosts exhibitions and various community events. This year's message, of course, comes as the King is continuing his treatment for cancer following his diagnosis earlier last year. And the speech will air right here on GB News on Christmas Day, radio and TV from 3 p.m. Those are the latest headlines for now. Charlie and Emily will be back with you after this very short break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Increasingly cloudy for most of us today, with drizzly rain arriving into the west and then spreading across the country overnight. At the same time, it's going to turn milder from the west, although we keep the chilly air for the time being in the east. High pressure building to the southwest will bring a marked change in the weather during the next couple of days, hence the mild but gloomy weather we're expecting for Christmas Day, and that's starting to move in during the rest of today. So outbreaks of rain into Scotland, Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. Some heavy bursts at times, but mostly it's light, patchy, drizzly type of rain. Very mild by the end of the day in the west, 11 or 12 Celsius. Staying chilly in the east as the cloud gathers. But even here, temperatures are actually going to rise overnight as the mild Atlantic air moves in. So for Monday evening, we've got outbreaks of relatively persistent rain in the west of Scotland, drier to the east, but extensive cloud. That cloud covering the hills, it will be low cloud. Likewise for Northern Ireland, much of Western England, the Midlands, Wales will see this sheet of low cloud, mist, hill fog, drizzly rain. And as that makes its way eastwards, we're going to see this rise in temperatures overnight, and that means that the lowest temperatures will be early in the night, and by the start of Christmas Eve, it's going to be remarkably mild out there. Very gloomy though as well, with a lot of low cloud, hill fog and mist. Temperatures of 11 to 12 Celsius in places by the start of Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve itself looking mild, but also very gloomy out there. A lot of grey skies and drizzly rain continuing for Northern England, Western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland in particular. Less wet further south, but staying largely cloudy. and mild across the board, 12 to 13 Celsius.
The latest GB News travel.
Northbound on the M3, a lane is closed on the exit slip road to a broken down vehicle at junction 1. Delays in place. Folly Hill in Farnham in Surrey, the A287, that is closed in both directions whilst accident investigation work takes place between the Borough and Drovers Way. Northbound on the M1, traffic has returned to normal though following an earlier vehicle fire from junctions 22 through to 23 for Loughborough. As we head to the West Midlands and Birmingham and Spark Hill, Stratford Road, the A34, that is closed in both directions. The slow traffic, the closure is to a building fire from Thornhill Road through to Greswold Road. No problems to report for the M4 though, both east and westbound, so across the UK. That's your very latest update.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Well, Merry Christmas, Britain. You're with me, Emily, and of course, Charlie Peters. And that breaking news for you that the King has chosen a former hospital chapel to deliver his annual Christmas message, breaking tradition.
Now, King Charles filmed the speech almost 2 weeks ago at the Fitzrovia Chapel in central London, and it's been reported that the decision to film it there is a nod to his ongoing battle with cancer.
Yes, I can understand why he might like to do that, as a nod. I mean, he is still undergoing some treatment for his illness. But there you go. That will be on Christmas Day. I'm always remarkable that he's already filmed it 2 weeks ago.
Yes, well, I think he's been, you build up to this moment, don't they? It's a serious moment in the royal calendar. But very interesting that he's chosen to film it in a medical setting. Because it's not just him who's been having that cancer fight, also obviously the Princess of Wales. It's been a family-wide battle, so...
Yes, I wonder what he'll have to say this year.
Yeah.
I wonder what he'll have to say. Anyway, we'll bring you more on that a little bit later, because we're going to turn our attention to, well, data, which sounds very boring, but this is very interesting.
It's not, I promise.
Reform UK have grabbed an early Christmas victory because Rupert Lowe is getting his benefits wish granted.
Now, the MP for Great Yarmouth, he's been campaigning on this for ages. The DWP, he wants them to be more transparent because he was very concerned that about 50,000 migrants were eligible for universal credit in the UK each month. And now the department has announced they're going to release figures on non-British citizens receiving benefits.
OK, well, joining us now is the Executive Director of Migration Watch UK, Mike Jones. Mike, so the data is being released. What do you expect it to show us?
Well, hats off to Rupert Lowe. I'm sure Mr. Lowe's name is kryptonite in the civil service, but at the end of the day, he's doing a great public service, and that's the most important thing. Essentially, the DWP have agreed to publish data on universal credit paid in 2023 to households where one or both claimants are non-UK citizens. And make no mistake, Emily, once this data is published, it will make front page news because we know from all sorts of other data sets that there are enormous differences between EU and non-EU migrants and between migrants from different national backgrounds.
And, Rupert, why do you think there's been resistance from the DWP on data like this? There's been the sort of argument, hasn't there, that we don't need to see this data. It only serves to divide the public. Why do you think it's so important that people do actually get to see this?
I mean, I think it's very important because sunlight is the best disinfectant. Ultimately, we need a more comprehensive, a more granular view of immigration policy, its consequences, and what's going on under the bonnet, so to speak. Now, why they haven't released the data is a different question. There are either two explanations for this. Either they haven't collated the data properly and it's very expensive to amass it in one place, or they're not releasing it due to various internal pressures. It's politically too sensitive, so to speak. But I think once the data is released, it will make front page news for sure. And there's lots of other data that does confirm this.
And Mike, it's not just economic data where the public and potentially also policymakers are sort of flying blind because this information isn't released. There's also concerns about the Home Office collecting lots of data on arrests by ethnicity, but doesn't collect data by nationality. And also, they won't answer questions on the immigration status of prisoners, such as, were they here illegally? The Home Office will not publish the immigration status of foreign national offenders, but they do have that data. Now, how widespread is this data secret situation that Rupert Lowe is starting to uncover?
Well, currently it's quite a bad situation. There's a black box there that needs to be opened. I mean, looking at the economic stuff, there are hints there that there's quite controversial stuff. You know, Oxford Economics in 2018, they found that non-EEA migrants cost the taxpayer about $9 billion. We also have numbers from the ONS, you know, published in 2021 that show that a migrant from New Zealand or Poland is almost twice as likely to be in work as a migrant from Iraq, and 50% more likely to be in work than a migrant from Bangladesh or Somalia. It's the same with crime. You know, the Scandinavian countries publish very granular data on this. We know that, you know, non-European migrants, particularly refugees, commit a disproportionate amount of crime.
OK, well, Mike Jones, thank you very much indeed. You're the Executive Director of Migration Watch UK. Have a very lovely Christmas if we don't see you. I have seen some criticism, though, of Rupert Lowe, that all of these freedom of information requests and data requests are actually costing the British state quite a bit in the way of money.
Well, I send off
resources.
Quite a few most days.
Yeah, you're costing the government so much by pinging off all of these freedom of information requests all the time.
Well, Emily, they're potentially costing us far more by hiding this data, keeping this information out of public knowledge, because you've just heard Mike there throwing around a few billions in terms of the economic cost of potentially issues with migration from non-EU countries. If the government has all this data and they're not releasing it, it does make you wonder why certain decisions have been made with more liberal migration strategies. But there we go. Hopefully more data to come out and it'll improve the openness of our debate.
I mean, going back to first principles, why are any foreign nationals getting benefits from the British taxpayer?
Yeah.
That seems utterly absurd.
It forces these questions to be asked. Mike said that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Well, we certainly need a lot more.
We haven't got any money. We've just been talking about how the economy is stagnating, regardless of the amount of immigration we seem to have.
Yeah.
So there you go. Anyway, this is Merry Christmas, Britain. Happy Christmas to you. And we've got lots more coming up on today's show. So do you say Happy Christmas or Happy Holidays? Because it seems to be disappearing from the streets of London. Happy Christmas. Anyway, we've been at a winter market.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
What about train Wi-Fi? The Times. It's so funny the Times did this story, because I was on the train yesterday trying to do some work and connecting to the Wi-Fi, and it happens all the time. It just doesn't work. It's pathetic. And then I opened the Times, and they've done a massive investigation. Loads of different rail routes from north to south.
Was that the James Bond thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, well, that passenger got through, or almost got through, one episode. One James Bond movie in 8 hours.
But you know, it's interesting. We call it train Wi-Fi, but it isn't. It's just really a SIM card on a train, really. So if your own phone's not going to get signal, why would we assume that the train's going to have signal? It just doesn't work like that. Unless you're in Japan or South Korea, whose infrastructure is infinitely better than ours, you're just not going to get signal. You have to download those films way before you get on
There is technology that can help with that. You know, there really is. If they found ways to put it underground, they can get it on ground and get you going. I definitely think, you know, with the price that we're paying for these tickets, they can get the Wi-Fi going. There is technology.
That's why it's so frustrating, isn't it?
Call Elon, get a Starlink, let's go.
If you're a passenger paying hundreds of pounds for a season ticket or whatever you call it, and, you know, commute to work every single day, and you're paying all this money, and you can't.
It's so expensive. You'd expect Wi-Fi at the basic. Yeah, exactly.
But it happens with phone signal as well. I'll be walking down London in Park Lane or somewhere else, or down on the south coast. I just don't have phone signal, and I think to myself, what on earth is going on?
Doesn't it feel like 5G's made it worse, though?
Yeah.
Because I feel like 4G, that didn't happen so much, but 5G just feels like...
Yeah, and then I always get this little E in the top corner of my phone, and I don't get any signal. I think it's got worse over the past couple of years. Yeah, especially with 5G. I agree with that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Merry Christmas, Britain. It is just 12:50. You're watching GB News with me, Charlie Peters, and the wonderful Emily Carver.
Oh, wonderful. Isn't that nice? Now, people said it was a bit of a conspiracy, didn't they? That, you know, the word Christmas was being slowly erased from this country and that people were so offended by the word Christmas.
You're laughed at. Have you ever raised this?
You were laughed at this.
Yeah.
You were told you were, you know, some mad person.
Some loon.
But it seems to be happening. Go to the busiest shopping streets in London today. You're hard pushed to find the word Christmas anywhere. Instead, you'll see holiday magic, merry everything.
Merry everything.
Holiday wonderlights. And one of the worst cases that we can prove is GB News presenter Ben Leo.
Yes, well, he's one of the worst cases, Ben.
He's one of the worst cases.
Yes, well, no, Ben Leo investigates Christmas markets. He's gone to one of London's busiest markets, and he was brave enough to call it a Christmas market, to quite some stern reaction. Let's see what Ben found out.
So we've just come down to what is described as London's biggest Christmas market. The only problem is they've called it, if you follow me, they've called it a winter come together. So my challenge now is to find anywhere in this market that says the word Christmas, maybe the word Jesus, any indication that this is indeed a religious holiday in the UK. We've got winter warmers at the winter market. Is this a Christmas market?
It's a winter market.
A winter market? What's the difference?
Something to do with religion, they can't say Christmas, but...
So apparently the stall traders here have been told they can't say the word Christmas. Happy Christmas or Happy Holidays?
Both.
Why both? It's Christmas, isn't it?
It's Christmas, yeah.
Why would you say Happy Holidays? Which scenario?
Because not everybody celebrates Christmas.
Happy Holidays or Happy Christmas?
Oh, Happy Christmas. Absolutely Happy Christmas.
Whoa, hang on a minute. Christmas? You'll offend people saying that.
I know.
Happy Holidays?
Happy Christmas.
Winter market?
Christmas market.
This is the first sign of Christmas I've seen in this market. Oh, good man, look at that. He's in the spirit. So what have you got here? You've got mulled gin. Cheers. From the winter market, not Christmas. Oh, that's good. That's good. That gets me in the festive mood.
It's just so ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, what is offensive about the word Christmas? It is Christmas, people.
Yep. Well, it certainly is. But there's been this war on Christmas thing for decades, right? People have always been kicking up a fuss, swearing about the Happy Holidays thing, the Merry Christmas thing. I'd much rather they sort of stuck to the Merry Christmas strategy. I was just reading in November 2009.
Oh, yes.
The City Council of Dundee was accused of banning Christmas because it promoted its celebrations at the Winter Night Light Festival with no specific references to Christianity. Similar thing taking place now. So it's not a brand new thing, what's been going on. I mean, in the States, there was this big controversy over Starbucks having their annual festive red cup, you know, that sort of festive cups that come out. They were, you know, they stopped saying Christmas a decade ago.
Yeah, but I mean, also, it's nativity plays becoming sort of completely erased of any mention of Christianity. Nothing like that. It's the winter festival, it's the winter concert, it's the winter market, there's no Christmas market. And you could see by one of those blokes, the one that was blurred out, you could tell he was a bit miffed about it all.
Yes, I wonder
he
why
wanted to call it Christmas,
yes, I wonder why we've blurred him.
He already wanted to make sure that people weren't going to not come to his business.
Identify him.
We protect our sources.
Yes. Undercover stall runner with his pro-Christmas
But it's true. See, like, this is not a conspiracy.
Can't do it. No, it's been revealed. Political correctness really has gone mad when it comes to Merry Christmas. There we go.
Well, this is Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. We don't shy away from saying Christmas. Lots more coming up on today's show. We are, of course, going to be returning to the awful atrocity in Germany and looking more about what the actual motive behind the suspect might have been.
The first bit of weather with Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Increasingly cloudy for most of us today, with drizzly rain arriving into the west and then spreading across the country overnight. At the same time, it's going to turn milder from the west, although we keep the chilly air for the time being in the east. High pressure building to the southwest will bring a marked change in the weather during the next couple of days, hence the mild but gloomy weather we're expecting for Christmas Day, and that's starting to move in during the rest of today. So outbreaks of rain into Scotland, Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. Some heavy bursts at times, but mostly it's light, patchy, drizzly type of rain. Very mild by the end of the day in the west, 11 or 12 Celsius. Staying chilly in the east as the cloud gathers. But even here, temperatures are actually going to rise overnight as the mild Atlantic air moves in. So for Monday evening, we've got outbreaks of relatively persistent rain in the west of Scotland, drier to the east, but extensive cloud. That cloud covering the hills, it will be low cloud. Likewise for Northern Ireland, much of Western England, the Midlands, Wales will see this sheet of low cloud, mist, hill fog, drizzly rain. And as that makes its way eastwards, we're going to see this rise in temperatures overnight, and that means that the lowest temperatures will be early in the night, and by the start of Christmas Eve it's going to be remarkably mild out there. Very gloomy though as well, with a lot of low cloud, hill fog and mist. Temperatures of 11 to 12 Celsius in places by the start of Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve itself looking mild, but also very gloomy out there. A lot of grey skies and drizzly rain continuing for Northern England, Western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland in particular. Less wet further south, but staying largely cloudy, and mild across the board, 12 to 13 Celsius.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock.
I'm sorry. Don't hesitate. Do it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Dora Carrington is not known to lots of people, and very few pieces are in public collections. So you have had a great deal of work to do to put this exhibition together.
Absolutely. It's been, next year, it will be 30 years since the last major exhibition of Carrington's work, which happened in 1995 at the Barbican Gallery. And I guess if people know Carrington's work, they might have seen the film that took place that year, that came out that year, starring Emma Thompson as Carrington and Jonathan Pryce as Lytton Strachey, who was her main kind of key relationship in her life. And that, in a way, dramatised a lot of those relationships. And so people will often know her life as much as her art. There's only 16 works in public collections, and so apart from chances such as the big billboard campaign you mentioned 10 years ago, there have been very few chances to actually see her work in the flesh. And so what this exhibition does is bring together around 80 works by Carrington and a few of her key contemporaries, providing a new generation really a chance to see and enjoy her work. She was one of the most remarkable of her generation at the Slade School of Art. She won several prizes for her drawing and her draftsmanship. And in the first room of the exhibition, we have some of the work, for example, a couple of female nudes that she painted when she was at the Slade, and they really are kind of quite outstanding.
One of the things that's been said is that in her landscapes, she's sometimes painting the human body as well as the landscape. Is that something that occurred to you? Can you stand up that?
Yes, I mean, one of her most famous paintings we have of Spain has. It's very much like you could liken it to the female form. You know, the kind of the
delicately put.
Yes.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Merry Christmas, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 23rd of December. I'm Charlie Peters.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, tributes have poured in for the 9-year-old victim of the Christmas market attack in Germany. We'll have our Home and Security editor, Mark White, joining us later.
We will indeed. And business leaders warn our economy is heading for the worst of all worlds. That's as the economy flatlines. Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, he claims better times are ahead, though.
We start from a disappointing set of economic statistics as we end 2024, but that's why we're going to fight every day to make sure that we improve the lives of working people across this country.
And Britain's new ambassador to the US is set to ask Nigel Farage to help him win over Donald Trump's administration. But can anyone salvage their relationship after Lord Mandelson said this about Trump in 2019?
With an American president who is little short of a white nationalist and racist.
Can that all be forgotten? And just broken in the last few moments, the King has recorded his Christmas message at a former hospital chapel, breaking with tradition. That's according to the Telegraph. Yeah, I wonder if Nigel Farage will be able to work with old Mandelson, eh? Whether he'll want to help him.
It's a questionable suggestion, I have to say. They're on different teams, are they not? Maybe you'll say they're both on Team Britain. They want a great relationship with Washington as this new administration comes in. But come on, they'll be politicking for different reasons.
But surely, you know, both claim to love this country, presumably.
Right, Team Britain.
Team Britain want the very best relationship with Donald Trump because that matters a lot to our economy and society and everything else. So surely they should.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm sure...
break bread together?
I'm sure Farage will be thinking, if I help them along there, then he's hardly...
And Labour will do well.
They'll hardly turn around and say, and this is all thanks to Nigel Farage and his great connections with Washington's finest and its leaders. No, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry,
it wouldn't make sense politically, would it?
I just can't see it.
No, unless there was some way of Nigel Farage making Lord Mandelson look inadequate.
Which I think is a realistic possibility, but not possibly in this scenario. I think it's very interesting reporting, to say the least, but I would be super surprised if it turned out that Farage, having spent years saying that Labour were a disaster, we're going to start propping them up diplomatically.
And talking of Nigel Farage and the Reform Party, I don't know if you've seen at home, but there is now a Reform membership ticker on the Reform UK website, and they are very close to matching the number of members the Conservative Party. So there you go, there's 120,685. They say that they'll overtake the Conservative Party at 131,680,000. So they're very much, they're nearing. Very close. Quite extraordinary.
We will overtake the Conservative
Well, it looks like it, doesn't it?
That's what they're saying. Not we could. They will. They're very close.
The Conservatives, a 200-year-old party or thereabouts, about to be trounced in membership terms, anyway.
Yeah, and it comes at a time when a lot of people are saying, Kemi Badenoch, what do you stand for? put out your positions. What is the Conservative Party going to be putting forward? What's its offering to the public? She's been in the position now for a couple of months. People still waiting, and I'm hearing a lot. They're waiting for some clear instruction on what the Tories might do, some of their policy positions. Meanwhile, you have to say both Labour and Reform being pretty strident on their policy positions. The Tories, a lot of the time, they just seem that they're out of the debate. Anyway.
Which is not a great place to be when you are the official opposition. Anyway, gbnews.com/your say. Let us know what you make of that membership ticker, what you make of Mandelson and Farage, perhaps the new love-in. Who knows? But there's your headlines next with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. It is just after 1 o'clock, and the top story this lunchtime. The UK economy flatlined in the third quarter of the year, with GDP showing no growth between July or September. According to revised figures, the Office for National Statistics partly blamed weaker trading in bars and restaurants, while businesses warn the country is headed for the worst of all worlds amid fears of reduced output and hiring. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the economic challenges are huge, but vows that her budget will deliver growth in the long term. Well, Shadow Culture Secretary Stuart Andrew spoke to us earlier here on GB News, and he pointed the finger at the Labour government, warning a recession is increasingly likely if their policies continue.
This is a really worrying time. They talk down the economy, so it's no wonder that confidence is falling, but then they made some disastrous decisions in the budget, not least the national insurance contributions hike, which is having a real impact on confidence for businesses and what they were thinking about for their future and any investments that they were thinking for growth. And then, I obviously work very closely with charities, for example, and they are facing a significant hike in their national insurance contributions bill, totalling about £1.4 billion.
Stuart Andrew there speaking to us earlier this morning. Well, King Charles will deliver this year's Christmas message from the Fitzrovia Chapel, a former hospital chapel in central London. It's the first time in over a decade the speech isn't recorded at a royal residence, with the King choosing the location to highlight healthcare workers and to foster unity between different faiths. The ornate 19th century chapel was once part of the Middlesex Hospital and now hosts exhibitions and events. This year's message comes as the King, of course, continues treatment following a cancer diagnosis earlier in 2023. And the speech is set to air on Christmas Day, 3 o'clock, right here on GB News. A suspected arson attack has caused a large fire in Birmingham today. Police say a car was deliberately set alight and rammed into a shop building in Spark Hill, with residents there describing an explosion sounding like a bomb going off. The blaze spread to flats above the shop, prompting evacuations. Thankfully, though, no injuries have been reported. Fire crews battled the flames with 10 fire engines. The situation is now under control, and West Midlands Police are urging anyone with information to come forward as investigations are now underway. Shop staff are facing a Christmas crime wave, with almost 700 shoplifting offences each day going unsolved over the past year. New figures show a 38% rise in unsolved cases since 2019, with more than half closed without identifying a single suspect. The Liberal Democrats are now warning that the trend leaves shop workers vulnerable during their busiest season. Morrisons Supermarket has apologised after a system glitch caused chaos for shoppers this morning, with loyalty discounts failing and Christmas deliveries cancelled. Customers reported their More Card savings didn't apply at tills, and some deliveries or click and collect orders were running late on one of the busiest shopping days of the year. The supermarket's website also experienced some outages. The NHS is urging families to watch for signs of dementia as they gather over the festive period, with diagnoses in England now hitting a record 500,000. Symptoms like forgetfulness, confusion and struggling with conversations could be early warning signs. Care Minister Stephen Kinnock says an early diagnosis is vital for accessing treatment and support. Alzheimer's Society says 1 million people are now living with dementia in the UK, but a third still remain undiagnosed. And the UK's most expensive street of the year has been named, but if you're dreaming of living there, well, you'll need very deep pockets. Homes in Knightsbridge average £21.4 million. The central London hotspot is followed by Ilchester Place in Kensington, coming in at £19.4 million. And then there's Grosvenor Square at £19 million. Lloyds Bank says London dominates the priciest streets list, but outside the capital, East Road in Weybridge is the costliest at just over £8 million. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Charlie and Emily.
OK, Merry Christmas, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 1. Now, of course, the tributes are flooding in for the 9-year-old boy, Andre Gleisner. He's been named as the youngest victim in the German Christmas market attack.
Now, taking to social media, his mother called him my little teddy bear and said he would always live in our hearts.
Now, the attack has left 5 dead and over 200 injured, with some remaining in a critical condition.
And that comes as the political party, the Alternative for Germany, prepares to march near the scene of the attack, with German authorities coming under fire after warnings about the suspect were reportedly received but deemed unspecific. Now, joining us for more on this is the GB News Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, what were the errors made by the German authorities in this attack? Because there are some concerns, are there not, about the security stance on that evening?
We'll have to see in the fullness of time just how significant they were in terms of errors, whether they can be explained away. But there were certainly, it seems, opportunities presented to the German authorities to get a handle on the potential threat that this individual, Taleb Abdul Mohsen, potentially posed to the German people. Now, going as far back as 2013, he came to Germany in 2006 to claim refugee status. He'd left Saudi Arabia, was eventually granted refugee status, granted asylum in 2016. But in 2013, during a dispute with one of the local authorities in northern Germany over the money he was being paid as an asylum seeker, he had apparently threatened to carry out an act which he claimed would garner sort of international attention, and specifically referenced the Boston Marathon bombing. So that was clearly drawn to the attention of the authorities. He was spoken to by de-radicalisation experts who deemed him not to be a significant threat. He was fined in relation to that incident. And then a number of other occasions, really from the moment he came in 2006, right through the years, about 4 separate occasions, the Saudis had specifically asked for him to be extradited, describing him as someone of extremist views who was being linked to people trafficking as well. None of that happened. He was indeed, as I say, granted asylum in 2016. And then, of course, we fast forward to just last year when a member of the public contacted the authorities, very concerned about some of the posts that he was putting out on social media, where again he appeared to threaten the German people. But it doesn't seem that any of those concerns that were raised either by the Saudis or indeed back in 2013 or last year were acted on in any meaningful way.
Well, you can see why so many German people, and Europeans for that matter, are so angry. This lax attitude towards border controls, the asylum system as well, also the security services failing. I even read that perhaps when it came down to the security of the Christmas market itself, things had not been in place as they were meant to be. This is a failure across so many different areas.
Yeah, there are big questions, I think, to be asked as well about, as you mentioned there, the security protocols around the market. I mean, these events in Germany...
It's awful we need security around Christmas markets, but there we are.
Well, Christmas markets in Germany in particular have such resonance. I mean, here in the UK, Christmas markets, we often refer to them as German markets or Frankfurt markets, because it is that tradition that is so treasured in Germany, with many hundreds of people turn out, family groups turn out at these markets in the run-up to Christmas. But they have learned the hard way in Germany and in other nations about terrorists, in particular the Islamic State, going after vehicle-borne attacks as a methodology for trying to kill as many people as possible. And we saw that in Germany in 2016 as well, with the Christmas market attack in Berlin, where a Tunisian asylum seeker hijacked a lorry, drove it into the Christmas market in Berlin. I was there covering that event at the time. 12 dead, 56 injured. And so they learned a painful lesson from those events and similar attacks, like, of course, another lorry attack in Nice, putting vehicle mitigation measures, bollards that are sunk into the ground, or sometimes are just big concrete chunks, but you get metal posts as well that are dug deep into the ground that offer protection from vehicles ramming those bollards at speed. But somehow, here at this Christmas market, there was a gap. It was believed that it was an area that emergency service vehicles could enter and leave with some ease. Well, that allowed him and that vehicle he was driving to get into that Christmas market as well.
And Mark, we've seen a continent-wide reaction to this incident. We've heard that there are some reports that in France they're continuing the Olympic surveillance measures they had, now stretching that into Christmas. But also in Birmingham, they were reviewing the security measures around their Christmas market. What's your understanding of how the counter-terrorism authorities in Britain are adapting their posture to this incident?
Well, the security around, in this country in particular, the security around Christmas markets has absolutely been reviewed, but not just that. Other crowded events in the run-up to Christmas, and that can be carol services, events where people are getting together for concerts and the like as well. That's all being re-examined. I was at a briefing last week, actually, at Scotland Yard with the new National Coordinator for Counter-Terror Policing, Vicky Evans, and she explained just how increasingly concerned authorities were becoming about the resurgence of the two main terror groups that we know so much and experienced firsthand the devastating effects from these groups, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, over the last couple of decades. Well, there is a real concern about them gaining strength again, particularly in areas in the Middle East like Syria, where we saw the fall of Bashar al-Assad in recent weeks as well. That space potentially being reoccupied by terror groups, or at least a concern that that might well happen, either to then launch attacks on the West or do what they do so well, which is to inspire those online in Western countries to go out and carry out these attacks. The terror threat level in the UK at the moment is substantial, meaning an attack is likely. If it got to severe, that would be an attack is highly likely. We're not there yet, but, you know, that can all change.
And we're expecting, just lastly, we're expecting what might be quite a tense situation this afternoon. The AFD will be protesting outside the cathedral in the town, very near to the scene. Do we have any idea from the German press just how many people may well turn up?
I would imagine it will be well attended. There is a great deal of concern in Germany and now growing support for this party that's expected and tipped to do quite well in those elections that are taking place in February in Germany. There is a great deal of concern, you alluded to it before, about mass migration and the security concerns around mass migration, the people that come across that they don't necessarily have a handle on, just the type of threat that they pose. So I'm sure it will be well attended. The police will also be out in force. We just have to hope that it passes without incident. Of course, it's a traumatised city. The last thing it needs is any kind of violence sparked from this protest, but no indication that that is going to happen. But it will be a chance for those people who support this party or don't support this party, but are very concerned about mass migration in Germany to come out and voice those feelings.
I imagine it'll be quite well policed. Thank you very much indeed, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor. Right.
Well, there's plenty more coming up on the show today, but just before we move on, here's the Vocal Zone Voice Studio Choir. They're from South Derbyshire, and they're singing Once in Royal David City.
Once in Royal David City stood a lonely cattle shed, where a mother laid her baby in a manger for his bed. Mary was that mother, but Jesus Christ her little child. He came down to earth from heaven, who is Lord and Lord of all, and his shelter was a stable, and his cradle was a stone, with the poor and mean and lowly, lived on earth the Saviour holy. For he is a childhood's pattern, day by day, like us he grew. He was little, weak and helpless, sick and sorrow, like us he knew. And he feels for all our sadness, and he shares in all our gladness. And our eyes and us shall see him, through his own revealing love. Oh, that heart so dear and gentle is our Lord in heaven above, and he leads his children on to the place when he is gone.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
This is Miss Universe fans hailing the end of wokeness and crediting the Trump effect after a biological woman, there's still some of them around apparently, has won the 2024 crown. She's Miss Denmark, because obviously the last decade, you know, it's just been a beast transgender smurfs from Papua New Guinea. They're the only people allowed to win any beauty contest, you know what I mean? You're not allowed to have any.
There's some of the trans women have won these. You definitely wouldn't say no. They look
Honestly,
amazing.
I've seen some of them that didn't, and some that were clearly just there out of well,
Have there been more than one trans woman? Has one missed? I didn't realise this.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've got a chart at home.
Wow.
This one isn't trans. Victoria Kjær Thielvig, 21 of Denmark. Everything about that description says attractive.
Nazis. Okay, yeah. I have seen pictures of her. She is very attractive.
Yes.
She is.
Yes.
I don't know exactly how to put it, but she is kind of not retro or vintage or so. She's quite an old-fashioned notion of beauty, like just absolutely ice blue eyes,
no penis.
Absolutely extraordinary, clear skin and gorgeous blonde hair. I mean, it's absolutely kind of mid-70s, beauty.
Well, apparently the sanity's returned to the beauty pageant industry, so they can get back to, sexualising 4-year-olds and promoting anorexia like they used to. So
there is that.
She will earn an estimated $250,000 annual salary working full-time as Miss Universe, and will live in a luxurious New York City apartment as she carries out her duties, which involve glass coffee tables and rich Saudi businessmen.
Glass coffee tables. worlds and visiting other planets and solar systems and constellations, I would imagine, in Miss Universe.
Being concerned about animals.
Yes, absolutely, and wanting to bring about world peace. I miss those days.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel. If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Merry Christmas, Britain. Merry Christmas, Charlie.
Thank you very much.
Not too long now to go, 2 days. Yes, lots of you have been getting in touch about all sorts. We were talking about the rise and fall of the Christmas market in this country. Indeed, winter seems to be the accepted term now. Winter market, not Christmas market. Jeremy's written in. He says, "Hi, Emily and Charlie. Anyone offended by Christmas must be a religious bigot. Local authorities who organise winter markets should ask themselves why they are pandering to bigots when they erase Christmas." Yes, I wouldn't seek to erase any other religion's festival, would you?
No, absolutely not.
No?
Absolutely not. But
Hanukkah,
it seems
whatever
an
else?
easy target. No one gets sufficiently upset, and so they can get away with it. Anyway, Andy says that with regards to this potential report that Lord Mandelson, our new ambassador to the US, could be working with Farage, Andy says Mandelson's irrelevant. All the big US-UK decisions will go via Farage first. Maybe Andy has some insight that has skipped the
Well, these ambassador roles, what exactly is their purpose? How important is our ambassador, in comparison to our foreign minister or our prime minister or our political people? What exactly, are there targets? Are they accountable? Can we rate them?
They'll have military teams and economic teams to further their relationship.
I'm not saying it's not an important job,
right?
But just how important is it? Should they be on which side of politics? Does that matter so much?
When it comes to history, people always talk about the relationship between the Prime Minister and the President. They never say, oh, how is the relationship with the ambassador? That's never really the leading question. So, I think you're right. I think it is.
Is it window dressing?
Yes, a little bit of that. Oh, just very quickly, I want to say get well soon to Grumpy Grandad, who is a regular on your say. It appears that he's had a stint in hospital. So, Grumpy Grandad, I hope you do get well soon, and I hope you do have a positive and Merry Christmas, despite some ongoing health concerns. And we're all thinking of you here in the studio.
We are. Grumpy Grandad. Hopefully we'll make you less grumpy.
Yeah, cheery Grandad, please.
Cheery
nice.
Grandad.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, Grandad. That's what I want to see.
He's patriotic. Yeah. He's got a flag there.
Good bloke.
Rather nice.
I like him.
Right, we're going to turn our attention to Lord Mandelson, Britain's new ambassador to the US. He looks set to call on the help of Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. Apparently, he believes this will help him win over Donald Trump's administration.
But after Lord Mandelson said this in 2019, is there any hope of a blossoming British and American relationship?
With an American president who is little short of a white nationalist and racist. Even those who have a sneaking admiration for Donald Trump because of the strength of his personality, nonetheless regard him as reckless and a danger to the world.
Well, there you go. How things change. Political correspondent at The Spectator, James Heal, joins us now. So what's going on here? Has Lord Mandelson actually physically reached out to Nigel Farage and said, can you help me in this job?
Well, no, this was back the comments he made in November to Times Radio podcast, talking about whoever was offered that job would need to reach out to the people in Donald Trump's orbit, of which Nigel Farage is perhaps the most prominent Brit. And this was all a sort of Sunday Telegraph story that came about because it was talking about Farage offering to reach out to Mandelson if he is to be appointed. There is still a process to go. We understand about sort of a fortnight where there is a slim chance, a very slim chance, but possible chance nonetheless, in which the appointment is not approved by the incoming administration. And then, of course, it will then be up to Mandelson to sink or swim. And clearly, given by the comments over the weekend, he's managed to already alienate some of Donald Trump's inner circle.
James, is Mr Farage friends with Lord Mandelson? What is the state of their relationship? Because there's been some reporting over the weekend that they've got quite a chummy relationship.
Well, my understanding is it's cordial enough. Obviously, they were very much on other sides of the EU referendum. Lord Mandelson was a creature of Brussels at the time that Nigel Farage was standing up there decrying attempts to create a Euro superstate. I think that it's fair to say they're obviously not political bedfellows, but of course you have to look at all the comments that Nigel Farage has made in the previous months, where he's had a spectator event where he criticised the various likely runners and riders. But for instance, he was more positive about Peter Mandelson, calling him a very clever man, compared to, say, David Miliband, who was another name in the frame. So I think that the relationship could be cordial enough. And of course, Nigel Farage is always very keen to get involved in US-UK relations. So I think that were Lord Mandelson to sort of use the trappings of office if he's appointed, take him over to DC and host him in the lavish, really newly done up gardens of the grounds, I'm sure that he would be very grateful to receive that offer and seize on it with open arms.
I suppose Nigel Farage might be a bit wary of making helping make Lord Mandelson look very good and effective with regards to the US administration.
Well, I mean, he's saying he's talking about the national interest, and in fairness to Nigel Farage, this is something he said for about 10 years. He said he was the first one over there in 2016 when they had the famous gold lift photo doing the thumbs up with Raheem Kassam, Aaron Banks and others, and he offered to debrief the Foreign Office, coming back to London, and the Foreign Office didn't take up that advice. So Farage's argument will be that, look, I am doing this in the national interest, I have got some intel. One diplomat in London I spoke to said that normally the White House has not much access but a lot of influence. If you can get to the president, you can influence them hugely. The opposite of true of the Trump White House in the first term, which is that there was lots of people who had access, but therefore it was quite difficult to influence what was going on. Nigel Farage is one of those voices. He will be saying, I will be speaking in the British interest, and he will be making the realpolitik argument that Peter Mandelson should take him up on that offer.
It's all very interesting, isn't it? And a lot of these men and women have relationships that go back many a year.
Yes, indeed.
You never know how close people are. But James, another thing that's come up in the last couple of days is this reform ticker. This membership ticker. And it does look like they're getting very close to, meeting the Conservative membership figure of 130,000 odd. Quite extraordinary.
Yes, and of course the criticism against Reform UK was always that it wasn't a proper political party, that it had a limited membership structure. Reform figures will counter that by saying, look, we had to set up a limited company to get the resources off the ground when we started as the Brexit Party back in 2018-19. Now they're saying we're a mass membership party. They've got the Conservatives, who are seen as the second largest party, in their sights, and they're currently on 120,000, as you can see on the screen there. The Conservative membership, according to the last leadership contest, was 131,000. So my understanding is that Reform expect to see that figure by the end of January, and they expect to overtake the Conservatives. And this is all about them trying to replace the Conservatives as the second major political party in British politics.
And James, quite a lot of those new members are young members, under 25s. They've got more than 1,000 young people in Britain signing up for Reform within 48 hours of a new membership opportunity being launched by the party. What signs does that show the Tories that more and more young people are off to join Reform?
Well, the Conservatives, I think, are in a real bind on this one because their membership is increasingly ageing. A lot of their candidates who were elected this time, the 26 new Tory MPs, ran on explicitly localist platforms and I think have shown a willingness to speak out against housing developments, for instance. Reform UK are able to say, look, well, the last government didn't do much for young people. They're going to be trapped between their membership and what their party public wants in terms of voting. And they're therefore making this big pitch to young voters. Rupert Lowe was tweeting about it over the weekend. I spoke to Nigel Farage at his press conference in November, and he was saying that he might regret having a youth wing, given all the scandals that youth wings tend to attract. But nonetheless, they are going to be starting up that. And we wait to see, and I very much look forward to whoever writes the first dispatch from the Reform UK Youth Wing Conference. I'm sure that'll be one to remember.
Oh, yeah, that would be quite fun, wouldn't it? Thank you very much, James Heal. It's a difficult one for the Conservatives, isn't it? Have a great Christmas, by the way.
Definitely.
Their average voter at the last election was in the 60s.
Yeah, the age just keeps climbing, and they want to cling on to that support within those categories as well. But lots of Tories, lots of activists are saying they're not doing nearly enough to bring in the next generation. What does the Tory party offer young people in Britain when it comes to work, housing, starting a family? All these questions, a lot of young activists, the Next Gen Conservatives group, they're really concerned, in particular, about that issue.
The Conservatives are a bit too analogue. You know, the Reform are very much mobilising the digital age. I don't know how much you're on social media at home, but they are everywhere. I think it's fair to say, they are everywhere. You know, they're getting the TikTok generation on board. A lot of young men, you know, find Reform cool. Yeah. You know, and if you've got the cool factor, then that's good. And then the Conservatives, you know, the brand for young people, something like, was it like 3% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted Conservative at the last election? Something crazy. Very much on one hand.
Well, how cool is Kemi? I guess I have to find out if that digital operation gets up and running. Well, this is Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. There's lots more coming up on today's show, but next, we've got a big update on the King's speech because he's breaking with convention, but that's up after your news with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just gone 1:30. The top story this lunchtime. The UK economy flatlined in the third quarter of the year, with GDP showing no growth between July and September. That's according to revised figures out earlier today. The Office for National Statistics partly blamed weaker trading in bars and restaurants, while businesses warned the country is headed for the worst of all worlds, they say, amid fears of reduced output and hiring. Well, Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the economic challenges are huge, but has vowed that her budget will deliver growth in the long term. Speaking to us earlier in response to that news, the Shadow Culture Secretary Stuart Andrew pointed the finger at the Labour government and warned that a recession is increasingly likely if their policies continue.
This is a really worrying time. They talk down the economy, so it's no wonder that confidence is falling, but then they made some disastrous decisions in the budget, not least the national insurance contributions hike, which is having a real impact on confidence for businesses and what they were thinking about for their future and any investments that they were thinking for growth. And then, you know, I obviously work very closely with charities, for example, and they are facing a significant hike in their national insurance contributions bill, totalling about £1.4 billion.
King Charles will deliver this year's Christmas message from the Fitzrovia Chapel, a former hospital chapel in central London. It's the first time in over a decade the speech isn't recorded at a royal residence, with the King choosing the location to highlight healthcare workers and foster unity between faiths. The ornate 19th century chapel was once part of the Middlesex Hospital. This year's message comes as the King continues treatment following a cancer diagnosis earlier in 2023. And the speech will air on Christmas Day at 3 p.m. across TV and radio here on GB News. Well, let's just bring you a piece of breaking news from the United States. In the last few minutes, a bombshell House Ethics Committee report has found that the former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz paid women for sex and drugs, including, they say, a 17-year-old girl in 2017. The report details thousands of dollars paid via PayPal and Venmo, and highlights a 2018 Bahamas trip where he engaged in sexual activity with multiple women and used illegal drugs. Investigators have also uncovered violations of house rules, they say, including accepting improper gifts. While the committee found no evidence that Gaetz violated any federal sex trafficking laws, the findings do, they say, paint a troubling picture. You may remember Gaetz, who was named last month as Trump's first pick for Attorney General, resigned from Congress shortly after, seemingly to avoid any further scrutiny from that ethics committee. And one last piece of breaking news for you from Scotland. We're hearing a small plane has reportedly crashed near Fife Airport. Emergency services were called to the scene around 11:40 this morning. Police and fire crews currently on site, though at this stage the details of any injuries and the number of passengers on board is unclear. Police say they are now investigating. We'll keep across those details for you and bring you any updates as they come into us. For now, though, that is the latest from the newsroom. Charlie and Emily will be back with you very shortly.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Increasingly cloudy for most of us today, with drizzly rain arriving into the west and then spreading across the country overnight. At the same time, it's going to turn milder from the west, although we keep the chilly air for the time being in the east. High pressure building to the southwest will bring a marked change in the weather during the next couple of days, hence the mild but gloomy weather we're expecting for Christmas Day, and that's starting to move in during the rest of today. So outbreaks of rain into Scotland, Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. Some heavy bursts at times, but mostly it's light, patchy, drizzly type of rain. Very mild by the end of the day in the west, 11 or 12 Celsius. Staying chilly in the east as the cloud gathers. But even here, temperatures are actually going to rise overnight as the mild Atlantic air moves in. So for Monday evening, we've got outbreaks of relatively persistent rain in the west of Scotland, drier to the east, but extensive cloud. That cloud covering the hills, it will be low cloud. Likewise for Northern Ireland, much of Western England, the Midlands, Wales will see this sheet of low cloud, mist, hill fog, drizzly rain. And as that makes its way eastwards, we're going to see this rise in temperatures overnight, and that means that the lowest temperatures will be early in the night, and by the start of Christmas Eve, it's going to be remarkably mild out there. Very gloomy though as well, with a lot of low cloud, hill fog and mist. Temperatures of 11 to 12 Celsius in places by the start of Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve itself looking mild, but also very gloomy out there. A lot of grey skies and drizzly rain continuing for Northern England, Western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland in particular. Less wet further south, but staying largely cloudy, and mild across the board, 12 to 13 Celsius.
The latest GB News travel.
Hi, good afternoon to you. I'm Jules Buckley. A couple of collisions causing delays this lunchtime. Firstly, between Spennymoor and Westerton in County Durham, where the A688 is currently blocked and slow going. And in Pontefract as well in West Yorkshire, Bondgate, the A645 is blocked between Box Lane and Bond Street. And that's due to an accident as well. To the West Midlands, to Spark Hill in Birmingham and the Stratford Road there, the A34, that's shut between Thornhill Road and Greswold Road. There's a building fire and that's causing delays. Still seeing queues for the northbound M1 before the Toddington services. Not up by an earlier collision that's now cleared. Slow back to 10, the Luton Airport Spur Road. And the clockwise M25 a lane out and slow going. There's a breakdown from Godstone at 6 to the M23 at 7. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Merry Christmas, Britain. It's just gone 40 minutes past 1. Now, the King has chosen a former hospital chapel to deliver his annual Christmas message, breaking with tradition.
Yes, King Charles filmed the speech almost 2 weeks ago at the Fitzrovia Chapel in central London. Now, it's being reported that the decision to film it there is a nod to his battle with cancer.
Now, our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, has the very latest for us.
For the first time in His Majesty's reign, the King decided to record his King's Christmas broadcast outside of a royal residence, instead opting for a location that serves the local community. I understand that the King also wanted to choose a venue which nodded to the royal family's recent health struggles, with the King and the Princess of Wales, of course, being diagnosed with cancer earlier on this year. He also wanted the location to have some sort of spiritual connection, welcoming people of all faiths and none. And I think it's no surprise that the King also chose his final public engagements of the year to visit the Waltham Forest Town Hall to celebrate community cohesion in London, suggesting he still places a huge importance on that theme. And the King also wanted a location with a royal connection. And by some Christmas miracle, the production team this year managed to tick all of those boxes. So the chosen location was the Fitzrovia Chapel in London. It was the former Middlesex Hospital chapel and serves as a place of solace, prayer and rest for staff, patients and their families. And following the King's own cancer diagnosis this year, and of course the Princess of Wales, it is no wonder that he chose a building that brought comfort to the ill and injured decades ago. And the foundation stone of Middlesex Hospital was actually laid by the King's grandfather, King George VI, in 1928. That was when he was the Duke of York. And although the King had not visited the chapel before, he had a huge interest in it, I understand. He spent a long time chatting to staff members after he'd recorded his speech about the building's history and, of course, his family's own connection to it. I'm also told when he arrived at the chapel to record earlier on in December, he was absolutely bowled over by the beauty of the place. And it is incredibly rare for a monarch to record their Christmas Day broadcast outside of a royal residence. The late Queen, Elizabeth II, only did so 3 times during the course of her 70-year reign, suggesting the King may be happy to break with some traditions and modernise the monarchy. The King's Christmas message will be broadcast on Christmas Day at 3 o'clock on GB News.
OK, well, there you go. There's Cameron Walker. Shall we speak to Charles Ray now, the former royal correspondent for The Sun? Charles, this is quite the change, isn't it? We know that King Charles is doing things slightly differently in a number of matters. But do you think this is all about his battle with cancer and the various health scares that the family have had?
I think it's partly to do with his battle with cancer and the fact that the Princess of Wales has also been battling it as well. I mean, it is a break with tradition, as Cameron has just said. It's 14 years since, for the last 14 years, it has been held at a royal residence. So it is quite different at all. And I mean, it's a beautiful building, this Fitzrovia chapel. It's a Victorian Gothic, which would fit in with his leanings towards the architecture. But it is mainly because of this, I think, about the cancer battle. It's a nod to that chapel, which served the former Middlesex Hospital, the patients and medical staff. So yeah, I think it is quite significant he's doing it, and it could well be that from now on he decides that he's going to do a roving King's speech in different places as well.
Now, Charles, it's understood that the selection of the chapel for this speech has been done to reflect the King's interest in the themes of healthcare and also community. Placing a special amount of focus on the way communities have come together across the country this year. Why do you think he's chosen that theme as well?
Well, I think it's because, we're living in times where there's a lot of, separation. There's a lot of disgust with all sorts of different matters that are going on. And I think he is very anxious that we try and get back together, that we all care for each other and we can all live together despite our differences on religion and other matters. And I think it's very important to him, as it is important for other members of the royal family, that we have a more friendly, cohesive people that will respect each other no matter what their viewpoints are.
Charles Ray, thank you very much indeed, former royal correspondent for The Sun. Have a wonderful Christmas if we don't speak.
Merry Christmas to you as well.
Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Difficult, isn't it, in this day and age for our monarch not to stray into the political?
Yes.
Because everything, even down to Christmas itself, and whether it's a Christmas market or a winter market, everything is political.
Yes, and we've been told by a royal source that one of the moves for this location for the annual broadcast is to give it a fresher, a more modern feel. The King wants to go out into our communities rather than us being brought into his. And that's an interesting change, isn't it? This idea that the monarchy connects more and more with the public, because of course, for decades we had the annual Christmas speech being delivered from Windsor Castle or Sandringham on a couple of occasions.
Is it dangerous for the relationship with the public to not be one of deference?
Yeah, it's
Should you not
existed that way.
defer
It's existed that way for a long time for a reason.
They're not one of us, in the same way as you're one of me, the plebs.
But I think they feel increasingly human this year because of those health scares.
Well, they've told us about it all.
Absolutely. In quite a unique way, in a way that hasn't really been done before, I think. And Cameron's spoken about this on the channel quite a lot this year, about the special relationship between the royal family and the healthcare community this year in particular, after quite a devastating year for them on that front. So I think it's an interesting selection.
It's quite a nerve-wracking thing to do for the monarch, to get it right, to not upset anyone, to not offend anyone, to be seen to, acknowledge everyone. Very difficult. But in other news, if you're in search of some winter sun, or perhaps you're an expat watching GB News, we know there are quite a few of you, actually. Here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello, welcome to your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. We'll see an east-west split weather-wise across southern parts of Europe over the next few days. Mostly fine in the west, more unsettled further east. Could see a few showers on Christmas Eve across the Canaries, but for much of Iberia, it's set fair, plenty of sunshine around here. And then we run into more unsettled conditions across southeastern parts of Europe, some wind, some rain, even some hill snow in places. And that east-west split continues as we go through the Christmas period. Further unsettled weather to come in the east, generally fine the further west you are.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Well, this is Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. There's lots more coming up on today's show. Are you dreaming of a white Christmas? Tough luck, because you're looking at a sweaty one.
Or at least drizzly.
Oh, God, I don't like that cue.
Get the deodorant out, guys.
Yes.
It's going to be a sweaty Christmas. Yes. That's next.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie,
hello.
Really
Hey,
good to see you this
Thank
morning.
you for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I brought some tasting samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo, just, you know. I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look.
You won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first. Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour, so...
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel.
That's my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
Wait, no, it's salty, yeah.
It's
okay.
salty.
Hang on, bit more.
Okay.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Crisps? Wait,
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. Cheese and onion.
Yes,
Salt
nailed
and
it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are
Oh,
off.
you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, Oh, welcome back. It's 1:52. I thought you were going to start then. Are you hoping for a white Christmas? Well, you're not going to get one if you live in the UK, probably. You might need to put that on hold for next year, maybe, because it's going to be hotter in the UK than it is in Rome and Istanbul.
We're expecting Britain to hit highs of 12 degrees with spells of sunshine.
Oh, so it might not actually be drizzly then?
No. Well,
it usually is.
Spells of sunshine implies spells of not sunshine. Well,
that's true.
Joining us now is the weather journalist Nathan Rowe. Nathan, talk us through what we're expecting on Christmas Day. Spells of sunshine, some positivity breaking through there?
You're both right. Actually, I wouldn't expect too much sunshine, but you're certainly right about the temperatures. We could hit temperatures of 15 degrees on Christmas Eve, slightly cooler on Christmas Day, but certainly well above average for the time of year. Not quite the hottest Christmas on record, that's 15.6, but I would be thinking probably about getting your turkey thighs on the barbecue rather than in the oven this year, because really, if you're hoping for a white Christmas, absolutely zero chance, unless you're at the top of the Cairngorms in Scotland. There you may get, and even that's unlikely, something left over from the couple of days. But really, we're talking about very, very mild, slightly gloomy, as this plume of warmer air comes up from the southeast and pushes away any chances of snow and brings in something more like the beginning of spring.
Nathan, do you think it's insufficiently festive weather? Do you feel like we've been let down by the forecast for Christmas this year?
Well, Charlie, you know, I'm always being asked in the run-up to Christmas, are we going to get a white Christmas? And I'm always saying, well, I don't know, let's keep our fingers crossed, and I'm always leaving people disappointed. I think we're more likely seeing milder Christmases than we are ever, you know, going to see a white Christmas. I can't actually remember a white Christmas for years. We tend to get the snow later in the year or earlier in the year, around February time. It's going to turn colder for New Year. So disappointing, but there you go.
Oh, well, you can't always, you know.
Yeah.
No, we can't. It's disappointing. At least it's not freezing. OK, Nathan Rowe, thank you very much indeed. It could be worse.
This is Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. There's lots more coming up on today's show. Don't go anywhere. But first, a broader look at the weather. You had Nathan, now you've got Aidan.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud has arrived and will continue to spread across the rest of the UK during the rest of today, bringing drizzle and hill fog, but also bringing much milder weather in time for Christmas. This warm front is the culprit. That's what's bringing the thick and low cloud to much of the UK through the rest of the day, along with outbreaks of mostly light and patchy rain and drizzle, some heavier bursts particularly running along northern Scotland. And by the end of the night, we're all in this gloomy but mild airflow from the Atlantic. So grey skies, hill fog, patchy drizzle first thing, but temperatures of 8 to 12 Celsius. So unusually mild as we begin Christmas Eve compared with the time of year and compared with Christmas Eves gone by. A lot of that cloud will stick around as well throughout the morning. A few breaks in the clouds, some brighter interludes there to the east of higher ground, so parts of the Midlands and perhaps eastern England, eastern Scotland as well, seeing some brighter skies. But western Scotland certainly seeing a lot of thick cloud and outbreaks of persistent, at times moderate or heavy outbreaks of rain and drizzle. The drizzle, though, and the more persistent wet weather mostly confined to western Scotland by the afternoon. There will be a few spots over the Pennines, parts of Northern Ireland as well. But the further south and east you are, the drier it will be. There will be some brightness coming through. And with this mild wind direction, temperatures widely of 12 or 13 Celsius, could even see 14 or 15 degrees in one or two spots. So after that mild afternoon, we go into a very mild Christmas night. A lot of cloud cover, that cloud low covering the hills of the north and the west, and it's going to bring further drizzle, particularly for western Scotland, with a strengthening wind by the start of Christmas Day. But Christmas Day itself, very mild, mostly dry.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting the call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
1 in 20 people are diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder across the UK.
Yes, Healthwatch has revealed that men are more likely to suffer from this than women. Did you know?
Triggers apparently include a decrease in daylight hours, which is certainly happening around about now. If you're leaving the office, it's dark. When you come home, it's dark, as well as the falling temperatures.
Yes, and both of those things happen a lot, don't they, here in Britain? So how can we combat the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder? Well, to discuss this, we're joined now by Dr. Andreas Fonseca, the founder and director of Thrive Mental Wellbeing. Really good to see you this morning, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, there'll be lots of people watching and listening this morning and saying, what a load of rubbish. It's always been cold in this country. It's always been dark. What is seasonal affective disorder? Is it really a thing?
Well, it is a thing, and it's been known for quite some time. This is not new, really. It is a form of depression. That's what it is. And it's got specific characteristics that kind of differentiate it from other forms of depression. So the reason probably we're talking more about it is because it's basically people are more aware of it and they're recognizing it more. So before you used to be sort of just saying this person's got depression, now you have some specific things to look at that can differentiate it from other kinds of depression, which is quite useful because it's got some specific forms of treatment. So the things that are different about seasonal affective disorder are that for the diagnosis you need 2 years in which you only have episodes during either the late autumn or early winter. So that's when they start, and they fade away by late spring, summer. Early summer. So that's how it works. And you cannot have any episodes at any other time. So it has to be seasonal, specifically seasonal.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Merry Christmas, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Monday, the 23rd of December. I'm Emily Carper.
And I'm Charlie Peters.
Well, tributes are pouring in for the 9-year-old victim of the Christmas market attack in Germany as more is discovered about the potential motivations of the suspect. Mark White has more.
And our business leaders are warning that the British economy is heading for the worst of all worlds as the economy flatlines. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, has said that better times are ahead.
We start from a disappointing set of economic statistics as we end 2024, but that's why we're going to fight every day to make sure that we improve the lives of working people across this country.
OK, and Britain's new ambassador to the United States is set to ask Nigel Farage to help him win over Donald Trump's administration. But is their relationship, can it be salvaged?
With an American president who is little short of a white nationalist and racist.
And some breaking news this afternoon. The King has recorded his Christmas message at a former hospital chapel, breaking with tradition.
I believe we have some pictures, actually, to show you of the King, of King Charles, filming his message, his Christmas message, of course. Now, he did this 2 weeks ago, and it's taking place... There he is.
There he is.
There he is. These are exclusive photos that he's released, and there he is as well. Now, this is a break in convention, isn't it? He hasn't filmed the Christmas message in a royal venue, but in a chapel, a medical chapel. And this, so that's very different.
Yeah, this chapel, actually, it was rebuilt in 1928. The King's grandfather, George VI, actually laid the foundation stone. But as we understand it, King Charles III had not previously set foot in the church, but he was absolutely enchanted by its size and its astonishing beauty. Now, looking at these pictures, I think we can see why he was so enchanted. Designed as it was by John Loughborough Pearson, an award-winning architect behind other iconic buildings such as Truro Cathedral down in Cornwall, and also Westminster Hall, and also additions to St Margaret's Church in the grounds of Westminster Abbey. So certainly a extensive legacy of beautiful chapels and church buildings.
It does look very stunning. You're absolutely right there. We are also going to be talking about something a tad more controversial today, and that is the wife of Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian dictator. Now, she is actually British. She was born to Syrian parents in London. And there is talk that she will be divorcing the former dictator and coming back to Britain, or indeed that's what she wants. Now, what do you reckon to that? Should she be allowed to come to Britain? Should she have her citizenship revoked, a la Shamima Begum? What should happen to her?
Well, this is Asma al-Assad. She's got a master's, I believe, studied at KCL in King's College London, that is. But
one of our fine institutions?
Absolutely. They're citing media sources in the Arab and also from Turkey for this information. The Kremlin have denied it. They're saying, no, she won't be leaving Moscow. She's not coming back to Britain. But there are these swirling rumours, and she certainly put her lot in a pretty difficult situation, marrying Mr. Bashar al-Assad. But could she now be seeking to get away from this nightmare that her family has been very much closely involved with?
Should we welcome her back, or should we say absolutely not? Absolutely not. There is a price to pay for marrying a dictator and potentially turning a blind eye to the gassing of hundreds of thousands of people. We shall see. gbnews.com/your say. Please do get in touch. Let us know your thoughts. But it is the headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom, fast approaching 5 minutes past 2. Well, leading the news today, the UK economy flatlined in the third quarter of the year, with GDP showing no growth between July and September, according to revised figures. The Office for National Statistics partly blamed weaker trading in bars and restaurants, while businesses warn the country is headed for the worst of all worlds amid fears of reduced output and hiring. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says the economic challenges are huge, but has vowed that her budget will deliver growth in the long term. Well, Shadow Culture Secretary Stuart Andrews spoke to us earlier, and he's been pointing the finger at the Labour government, warning that a recession is increasingly likely if their policies continue.
This is a really worrying time. They talk down the economy, so it's no wonder that confidence is falling, but then they made some disastrous decisions in the budget, not least the national insurance contributions hike, which is having a real impact on confidence for businesses and what they were thinking about for their future and any investments that they were thinking for growth. And then, I obviously work very closely with charities, for example, and they are facing a significant hike in their national insurance contributions bill, totalling about £1.4 billion.
King Charles will deliver this year's Christmas message from the Fitzrovia Chapel, a former hospital chapel in central London. It's the first time in over a decade the speech isn't recorded at a royal residence, with the King choosing the location to highlight healthcare workers and foster unity between faiths. Well, as beautifully described by our very own Charlie, the ornate 19th century chapel was once part of the Middlesex Hospital and now hosts exhibitions and events. This year's message comes as the King, of course, continues treatment following his cancer diagnosis. And the speech is set to air on Christmas Day at 3 o'clock right here on GB News. A suspected arson attack has caused a large fire in Birmingham today. Police say a car was deliberately set alight and rammed into a shop building in Spark Hill, with residents describing the explosion as sounding like a bomb going off. The blaze spread to flats above the shop, prompting evacuations. Thankfully, though, no injuries were reported. Fire crews battled the flames with over 10 fire engines. And West Midlands Police are now urging anyone with information to come forward. Shop staff are facing a Christmas crime wave, with 670 shoplifting offences each day going unsolved over the past year. New figures show a 38% rise in unsolved cases since 2019, with more than half of closed cases without identifying a suspect. The Liberal Democrats are warning the trend leaves shop workers vulnerable during what is the busiest season. The NHS is urging families to watch for signs of dementia this Christmas as they gather together. That's as diagnoses in England hit a record 500,000. Symptoms like forgetfulness, confusion and struggling with conversations could be early warning signs. Care Minister Stephen Kinnock says an early diagnosis is vital for accessing treatment and support. Alzheimer's Society says 1 million people are living with dementia in the UK, but a third remain undiagnosed. And Morrison's supermarket has cut the price of items including turkeys and champagne for all shoppers after a system glitch caused chaos with loyalty discounts failing and Christmas deliveries cancelled. Customers reported their More card savings didn't apply at tills and some deliveries or click and collect orders were running late on one of the busiest shopping days of the year. The supermarket's website also experienced some outages earlier. Those are the latest headlines for now. Another roundup in about half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Charlie and Emily.
Merry Christmas, Britain. It's coming up to 8 minutes past 2. Now, tributes have flooded in for the 9-year-old boy, André Gleisner, who has been named as the youngest victim in the German Christmas market attack.
It's devastating. Taking to social media, his mother called him my little teddy bear and said he would always live in our hearts.
Now, the attack left 5 dead and over 200 injured, with some remaining in a critical condition.
Yes, Alternative for Germany, the political party, is preparing to march near the scene of the attack this afternoon. And German authorities are very much coming under fire after warnings about the suspect were reportedly received last year, but deemed unspecific and perhaps ignored.
Yes, well, we're now joined by the GB News Home and Security Editor, Mark White, for the latest. Mark, what do we know about the current failings and understanding of the failings that led to this attack?
A number of opportunities over the years, it seems, were presented to the German authorities about this man, Taleb Abdel Mohsen, who arrived in Germany in 2006, claimed asylum, was eventually granted asylum in 2016. The Saudis say that they sent a number of requests and diplomatic cables to Germany warning about the extremist nature of this individual, saying that they wanted him extradited to Saudi Arabia to stand charged with people trafficking. That didn't happen for whatever reason. The Germans granted him asylum, so he was never sent, despite those repeated requests by the Saudis, back to that country. And perhaps you can understand that if he presents himself as a dissident from that country who would potentially be in harm's way if he was returned there. That might strengthen his case for asylum. Whatever, he was granted asylum in 2016. In 2013, we're told that he had made threats to a local government department over the benefits he was receiving as an asylum seeker, clearly unhappy with those benefits. At one point, he had threatened some kind of an act that would gather international attention and specifically cited the Boston Marathon bombing, which clearly then rose concerns amongst German authorities, and he was spoken to by counter-extremism experts, de-radicalisation experts. And he was fined, we understand, in connection with that incident, but it was deemed that he wasn't any more of a significant threat than that. And then, of course, last year, another report to German authorities about his postings on social media, which indicated that he was threatening potential consequences for the German people. So a number of opportunities, it seems, over the years for the Germans to have acted on and gained a better understanding of just what potential threat this person could have been, but it either wasn't fully acted on or wasn't acted on at all. It will of course, form part of the investigation going forward.
And it's a story that we hear so many times. We've heard so many times before. So frustrating for Europeans watching this unfold and feeling so helpless, I guess. I'm just reading in the German press that he's being held in a high security prison, and that they're making sure essentially that he's in a specially protected cell so that he does not commit suicide. This will eventually go to trial, presumably.
That will be, will be part of the process many months potentially from now, once the German authorities have properly built their case against him. We don't know. He might come out and plead guilty at the very earliest opportunity, as sometimes happens. But you're right to flag up the fact that often with these attacks, whatever the potential motivation is, these things rarely happen in isolation. People are often on a journey which takes them ever more deeply into sort of extremist and offending behaviour. And during that process, they will often come across the radar of the police and security services. And despite the authorities telling us in the first day or two after this incident that he was not known to them, it's clear he was.
And Mark, when this sort of situation takes place, these appalling attacks, obviously the first thing the authorities do, they control the situation, cordon it, clear it. But what are the next steps for the counter-terrorism authorities? What sort of investigation are they launching now? What will they be looking into?
They always look in the first instance to determine that this was an isolated incident and that there aren't any other individuals out there that could be linked to this person that might be planning something similar. What the German authorities say is this person appears to have acted alone. There is no wider threat in that sense. So going forward, it's an investigation that is focused on the motivations behind what took place and how this was allowed to happen. Part of that will be the protection, the vehicle mitigation measures around this market. This is something we've had to grow accustomed to in the UK and elsewhere in Europe over the last decade and a half, really, ever since ISIS rose to prominence and called on its members to do away with or not be as focused on these big multi-pronged, sophisticated attacks involving lots of people and looking at explosives and alike, but instead to be much more rudimentary, to get behind the wheel of a vehicle and use that as a weapon to grab knives from a kitchen drawer. Well, since the advent of ISIS, and in doing that, we saw a spate of these vehicle-borne attacks. And so now what you have around crowded places are these vehicle mitigation measures. And it can be as, unsophisticated as great big, large concrete blocks, or it can be more sophisticated metal pillars that are dug deep down into the ground and are made to look like plant pots and things like that actually enhance the local area. They look quite nice. I don't speak in, well, I do speak in part in jest, but it's true. If you go around central London and go around Westminster, you'll see things that look like benches, that look like lovely floral displays and, baskets, but they're actually, big concrete and metal pillars dug well into the ground that offer a degree of protection from vehicles travelling at high speed trying to access an area.
Well, there you go. That's the state of modern Europe. Thank you very much indeed, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor. This afternoon, the Alternative for Deutschland, the AfD, there's a protest that's going to be taking place, the anti-immigration party. So I think that's at around 4 o'clock this afternoon. Yes. It's going to be taking place near the scene.
They certainly don't want to see any beautified barriers placed to mitigate for these sort of attacks, but that's just what is required due to the current threat level.
Well, in other news, the British wife of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, Asma, is filing for divorce, according to reports from the Jerusalem Post and elsewhere.
I should say former president, very much a former dictator at the moment.
Yes.
But she is apparently dissatisfied with life in Russia after they fled there following a coup by rebels in the Middle Eastern country. Now, Asma reportedly wants to return to Britain, but the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has said that she is not welcome and she is sanctioned.
OK, well, to discuss this further, we're joined by former intelligence analyst Ewan Grant. Ewan, if this is true, that Asma is wanting to come back to Britain, how should our government react?
Well, I think, thank you very much. I think David Lammy has made it clear she wouldn't be welcome. Theoretically, she could face investigation and potential prosecution. There was a preliminary Metropolitan Police investigation a couple of years back, just before the pandemic. She is sanctioned. So I think, frankly, it's very unlikely that she would come here, but there's a very real possibility she might go to Turkey or to one of the Gulf states, or maybe a quasi-ally of Russia like Azerbaijan. Better weather, more congenial for her. One big caveat, which might see her coming here, although I think it's unlikely, is on humanitarian grounds. She's ill. She apparently has several cancers. Maybe they might allow her in for medical treatment. Remember what happened all those years ago to the Shah of Iran. But the Russians and her husband wouldn't want her here, just in case she might possibly let slip things about the Assad regime.
Ewan, does she still have
I think it's very unlikely.
Does she still have her British citizenship, though, her passport? Would she have to be stripped of it if she were to try and make it back over here? Would the Home Office have to take that step?
Yeah, well, good point. Yes, they would to refuse her entry. I mean, British citizens cannot be refused entry. Of course, they can immediately be arrested if there are legal grounds to do so. As we know, with the jihadists who went to ISIS, there have been removals of citizenship. So that would be done if absolutely necessary, but frankly, I don't think it will be. I understand some of the sources for this story are coming from Turkey, which is not surprising. I think she would probably go to Turkey because President Erdogan there will want to hedge his bets. Assad has gone, but not everybody in the regime has gone. They are still discussing things, very interesting things, with the new rulers.
And you and Asma al-Assad didn't exactly have a charmed start to her relationship with the family she married into. She's a Sunni, they are Shia, she's from Homs, she's not from the sort of Damascus elite. But she did fully back her husband in 2013. Do you think that could have been an opportunity for her to sort of escape untarnished by the extreme violence that occurred after the start of the Syrian war? And now there's no hope of her to come back.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. We tend to forget that although Assad survived in 2013, it was very much touch and go before the Russians and the Iranians really intervened. I mean, there was heavy fighting in Damascus itself, and many thought he would go. So, yes, she had her chance then. She's, frankly, I think, burned her boats as regards the UK or indeed anywhere in the European Union.
Yes, well, hopefully the government will take a bit of a strong stance on this one. I'm not sure many people in this country would welcome her back, but stranger things have happened. Ewan Grant, thank you very much indeed, former intelligence analyst, and a Merry Christmas to you as well.
Well, this is Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. There's lots more coming up on today's show because the economy has flatlined. And what's Labour's plan to turn the tables? They'll be hoping for some good news after the Christmas period.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail now, Josh, and pub landlords have to worry about more than the optics when it comes to offensive banter,
Yeah,
it
this
seems.
is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of, they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer has to should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route. Okay. And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. He had a show cancelled not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset.
There was a bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out because...
exactly. They had turfs on the...
Turfs. Yeah. GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, it's 2:24. You're watching and listening to Merry Christmas Britain with me, Emily Carver, and Charlie Peters. Now, are Labour struggling to stop the UK economy from stagnating? Well, yes, clearly they are. That is the answer to that question.
That's the story. Done.
That's the story.
We can move on then. There we go. Well, the latest GDP figures released this morning show that the British economy is flatlining. So, are we heading towards a Rachel Reeves recession?
Well, speaking this morning, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, tried to put a positive spin on things.
So look, this Labour government is going into 2025 with absolute resolve to work with investors, wealth creators and workers across the country to stimulate economic growth and improve living standards for workers across the country. This is our number one mission as a government, and we start from a disappointing set of economic statistics as we end 2024. But that's why we're going to fight every day to make sure that we improve the lives of working people across this country.
OK, Darren Jones there. Now we're joined by the Professor of Economics and Public Policy at King's College London, Jonathan Portes. Jonathan, thank you very much. We hear from Labour ministers about how they've inherited such a bad economic situation. But things have actually got worse, haven't they?
Well, I don't think you can read that much into quarter-by-quarter figures. The figures for last quarter were revised down a little bit. The figure for the previous quarter, actually, which of course was under the previous government, was also revised down by 0.1%. I mean, I think we can come on to what Labour are doing and whether that's making things worse or better. But there's no question that the sort of big picture is that we have had a pretty disappointing economy in terms of growth, productivity growth and living standards for pretty much the last 15 years, but especially the last few years. So there's certainly a lot of work to do and a lot of ground to making up. That Labour have had a pretty dismal inheritance. I think it's quite too early to judge whether they're going to succeed in turning that around.
But Jonathan, have they not chosen policies that will do damage to the economy? And we're seeing that in action already. National insurance.
Tax rises haven't come in yet, and indeed, for the quarter that we're talking about, last quarter, the budget, of course, had not even been announced, let alone implemented. So it's a bit odd, I think.
Yes, but sorry, Jonathan, but if you cast your mind back to that point, we had Keir Starmer talking down the economy, saying things are going to get worse before they get better. We had huge amounts of speculation over the budget. Business people were worried about what would be happening next. And, you know, as a professor of economics, you know that so much of economics and the way things go is down to how people feel, the confidence that they have. And Labour came in and they talked down the country, did they not?
Well, you're right. And I think they did actually make something of a mistake with being about too negative. But if you actually look at the figures, again, that's slightly hard to substantiate. The figures for business investment, which is what exactly, as you said, if somehow confidence was the main reason and had been adversely affected, the figures for business investment were actually revised up last quarter, and business investment actually rose quite nicely last quarter. It was one of the sort of more encouraging things about what otherwise was not a particularly encouraging set of figures. So I think that story is quite difficult to substantiate given what we know. I do think that there's no doubt the government has got a lot of work to do. And in particular, they've got to translate, following on to the budget, they do have to restore business confidence. They do actually have to show that they have a plan for growth and that business should continue investing. And that there is an incentive for business to invest because the government actually has an economic strategy for not just the next few months, but for the next few years.
Well, Jonathan, you say that they've got a lot of work to do. It seems, based on some of the upcoming plans that the Chancellor has, that they clearly think they've done quite a lot already. Rachel Reeves is set to make a speech in January saying that she's now fixed the foundations of the British economy by restoring stability, and that she'll now put forward plans for economic growth. Do you think we have anything close to fixed foundations and that we have stability? Housing is a complete disaster. Our infrastructure is in pieces. You can't build rail, you can't build trams. The roads are in a real state. Potholes are a major crisis in the regional areas. By what measure has this Labour government in 6 months fixed the foundations of our economy?
I think that, as you say, is political rhetoric. We do have stability. I mean, I think arguably we had stability after, once the disaster of the Truss mini budget had been repaired largely by Jeremy Hunt. We've had stability, but stability isn't enough to generate a decent level of growth going forward. To do that, we need all the things that you've been talking about, in particular, reform of planning, proper plans to deliver infrastructure and transport improvements, proper plans to build houses and all the rest of it. And certainly, I think the government has made an encouraging start on some of those. But at the moment, as you say, it's mostly just plans. It's certainly not delivery yet. And the real test over the next couple of years is whether they can translate that sort of rhetoric and some nice sounding words and policies into things actually being built.
And what seems to be missing from this economic discussion at the moment, Jonathan, is migration. We've had so much focus on the net migration figures surging for the last year, but no politicians in the government seem to be conceding that some of our stagnation could be linked to the record rise in migration that we're facing. Do you think the government will take that on? Do you think they have the political capital to take it on?
Well, I mean, migration has been one of the few economic bright spots of the last couple of years, right? So we can see that all the employment growth we've had in the UK economy since the pandemic has been down to migration. We also had last week the report from the Migration Advisory Committee, which debunked some of the nonsense flared by some of your more sort of deranged presenters that migration everybody who's coming as a low-skilled worker is an economic negative. As the Migration Advisory Committee made very clear, people who come on skilled work visas make a significant positive economic contribution, significantly more than the average British worker. That's and of course, you know, we should remember that migration on the whole, particularly sort of migration we've had lately, which has been mostly work-related migration, has generally boosted the economy. Now, of course,
we know that with those skilled work visas, almost an equal number of dependents come with, and that's where the cost comes. Jonathan, we'll have to leave it there.
No, I'm sorry, they also said that was wrong as well. You can see that in the report.
I've read the report and I've read all the synopsis, but it's not very nice to call presenters on this channel deranged, is it, Jonathan? I'll let that one pass because I'm feeling festive. I'll let that one pass, but great to speak to you. Have a wonderful Christmas, while you're
Jonathan.
at it. I think you're one of the deranged ones, actually.
No doubt. Clearly what he was saying there.
No, but that's lovely. Just one thing, a lot of people getting in touch saying actually Labour inherited a growing economy. You know, you're pointing out that maybe things were turning a corner and that actually now it's going in the other direction. But yes, we shall see.
Yeah, pretty controversial stuff, I think, from Jonathan on the migration discussion there. As we've just found out today, we're going to get more data on migration dependence on benefits released following a campaign by Rupert Lowe. And they've got some breaking news for you now, because Sir Keir Starmer is to go abroad with his family for a few days over the new year.
Yes, the Prime Minister and his family will spend Christmas at Chequers, his official country residence, before taking a break elsewhere.
Now, we heard some reports in the last couple of days that Sir Keir Starmer, friends close to the Prime Minister, said that he was extremely tired and wanted a holiday. Of course, he cancelled his holiday in August at the start of those protests following the Southport stabbings. But there we go. He's going to go abroad with his family for a few days over the new year. He's going to finally get that little holiday he wants.
OK, well, there you go. This is Merry Christmas Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Britain's high streets are changing. Are the barbershops taking over? More on that next.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. It's just after 2:30. Well, the top story today, the UK economy flatlined in the third quarter of the year, with GDP showing no growth between July and September. That is according to revised figures out this morning. The Office for National Statistics partly blamed weaker trading in bars and restaurants, with businesses warning that the country is headed for the worst of all worlds, they say, amid fears of reduced output and hiring. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says the economic challenges are huge, but she's vowed that her budget will deliver growth in the long term. Royal News and King Charles will deliver this year's Christmas message from the Fitzrovia Chapel, a former hospital chapel in central London. It's the first time in over a decade the speech isn't recorded at a royal residence, with the King choosing the location to highlight healthcare workers and to foster unity between faiths. The ornate 19th century chapel was once part of the Middlesex Hospital and now hosts exhibitions and events. This year's message, of course, comes as the King is continuing his cancer treatment following diagnosis back in 2023. And you can follow along with the speech at 3 o'clock on Christmas Day right here on GB News. A suspected arson attack has caused a large fire in Birmingham today. Police say a car was deliberately set alight and rammed into a shop building in Spark Hill. Residents there described the explosion as sounding like a bomb going off. The blaze spread to flats above the shop, prompting evacuations. Thankfully, though, no injuries were reported. Fire crews battled the flames with 10 engines on site, bringing the situation now under control. Well, let's bring you some pictures now coming to us from Manhattan, where the New York murder suspect Luigi Mangione has appeared in court in just the last few moments. That's in connection with the fatal shooting of United Healthcare Chief Executive Brian Thompson. The 26-year-old is facing 11 charges, including now first-degree murder and terrorism. If convicted, he could face life in prison without parole. In addition, though, to the state's case in New York, a federal case against Mangione is also running concurrently. One of the charges in that case, murder through use of a firearm, would make him eligible for the death penalty if convicted. However, his defence attorney has called the situation highly unusual, noting conflicting theories between the state and federal cases. We'll keep across developments for you from New York throughout this afternoon. Well, let's bring you one last update from Scotland. We've heard in the last few hours that a light aircraft has crashed near Fife Airport. Emergency services were called to the scene just before midday this afternoon. Police and fire crews are still currently on site, though details at this stage of the number of people on board and any injuries are still unclear. A spokesperson, though, for Police Scotland says inquiries are now ongoing. And Morrison's has reduced the price of various items, including turkey and champagne for all shoppers. That's after a system glitch caused chaos with loyalty discounts failing and Christmas deliveries cancelled. Customers reported their more card savings didn't apply at tills, and some deliveries or click and collect orders were running late on one of its busiest shopping days of the year. The supermarket's website also experienced some outages. That's it from me for this afternoon. Sophia Wensler will have a full roundup at 3 o'clock, and Charlie and Emily will be back with you after this break.
Hello and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Increasingly cloudy for most of us today, with drizzly rain arriving into the west and then spreading across the country overnight. At the same time, it's going to turn milder from the west, although we keep the chilly air for the time being in the east. High pressure building to the southwest will bring a marked change in the weather during the next couple of days, hence the mild but gloomy weather we're expecting for Christmas Day, and that's starting to move in during the rest of today. So outbreaks of rain into Scotland, Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. Some heavy bursts at times, but mostly it's light, patchy, drizzly type of rain. Very mild by the end of the day in the west, 11 or 12 Celsius. Staying chilly in the east as the cloud gathers. But even here, temperatures are actually going to rise overnight as the mild Atlantic air moves in. So for Monday evening, we've got outbreaks of relatively persistent rain in the west of Scotland, drier to the east, but extensive cloud. That cloud covering the hills, it will be low cloud. Likewise for Northern Ireland, much of Western England, the Midlands, Wales will see this sheet of low cloud, mist, hill fog, drizzly rain. And as that makes its way eastwards, we're going to see this rise in temperatures overnight, and that means that the lowest temperatures will be early in the night, and by the start of Christmas Eve, it's going to be remarkably mild out there. Very gloomy though as well, with a lot of low cloud, hill fog and mist. Temperatures of 11 to 12 Celsius in places by the start of Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve itself looking mild, but also very gloomy out there. A lot of grey skies and drizzly rain continuing for Northern England, Western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland in particular. Less wet further south, but staying largely cloudy and mild across the board, 12 to 13 Celsius.
The latest GB News travel.
Hi, good afternoon to you. I'm Jules Buckley. Still issues in County Durham where the A688 remains blocked between Westerton and Spennymoor. A collision there causing delays. There's been a bump too on the northbound M6. Catalan to Carlisle South is struggling. Junction 41 to 42. 2 lanes are currently coned off at the scene there of a collision. On the southbound M6, just at the Croft interchange. So that's the M62 turn off at 21A. Queues for nearly a broken down car. Now on the hard shoulder, but still heavy before Newton Llewellyn at junction 22. And a couple of issues on the M1 southbound this lunchtime. Firstly, queuing around the tip shelf services. There was a collision there, and of course there's some roadworks there too. A fallen tree means lane 1 blocked southbound on the M1. Coventry 17 down to Daventry at 16 is looking slow.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Merry Christmas, Britain. It's 39 minutes past 2. You're watching GB News with me, Charlie Peters, and the wonderful Emily Carver. There's plenty more coming up on today's show.
What's left sarcastic of it? When you say
no,
wonderful.
Absolutely not. Well, you called me deranged a minute ago, so I'll take that. But before that...
Well, Jonathan called, I don't know. He didn't specify, did he?
That's true.
He didn't specify.
Well, he's a man of great thought and wisdom. It's Martin Daubney. He's up at 3 p.m. Martin, what is coming up in your show later today?
Anything deranged?
Well, you wonderful people, both of you, I've got a wonderful show. All eyes on Magdeburg, of course, the terrorist attack that sickened the world at the Christmas market last week. There'll be a rally by the AfD, German political party, at 4 p.m. We'll be live from that. I'll also be joined by a former AfD MEP, asking him what the future holds for German politics. The area has been very welcoming over the years to immigrants, a huge amount in the old Eastern communist side of Germany. They're simply now saying enough is enough. Mass deportations is on the table. This is not a far right-wing area. This is an accommodating area that simply had enough. And up next, Nigel Farage and Anne Mandelson, a marriage made in heaven or a marriage made in hell? Does this place Nigel Farage as a serious political player, or is he helping his enemies? Why help Sir Keir Starmer? And an astonishing new survey, a stinker, shows that a quarter of Brits will go jingle smells rather than jingle bells and wear the same underpants over Christmas. Half won't even take a shower. Ding pong merrily on high. What on earth is making Brits go so smelly? That's all coming 3 till 6.
I thought I could smell something in the studio.
Oh, come on.
Just joking. Charlie's very well groomed, aren't you?
I look after myself. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Martin. It's going to be a cracking show. Very good stuff. Well, there you go.
Yeah, all right.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Okay.
I know, so obvious. Eh?
Moving on, I brought this story to the programme today, so I hope it's not a stinker.
Oh, did he now?
Hope it's not a stinker. Britain's high streets, they're always changing, and you're starting to notice an influx of barbershops because reports in the Daily Mail have said that there's been a 12% rise in hairdressers since 2019, with the northern town of Darlington seeing one of the highest with a 25% rise.
Well, police are expressing some concern that some of these outfits may be money laundering operations for crime gangs.
Now, we're joined by the retired police officer Norman Brennan to discuss this further. Norman, there's a lot of concern we've heard from GB News viewers on this story when we've covered it in the past. Do you think that crime and organised crime is behind a lot of these barbershops popping up?
Probably wouldn't be fair to say a lot, but without a doubt, like you and many of of your viewers and listeners, I too see huge numbers in my area, which is Twickenham, Richmond, Teddington, that are coming up, and sometimes your high street is saturated with them. And it would also be fair to say that some of these establishments are fronts for money laundering. And what money laundering is where you put dirty money through a system and it comes out the side. It comes out the other side as clean money. The type of crime we're looking at is drug dealing, people smuggling, and prostitution. And many of these people are very cute that quite often their shops are empty, yet they're doing a roaring trade. And yes, the police are interested in some of these.
Yeah, Norman, I mean, in this Mail report, apparently Darlington, so it has a population of 110,000 odd. It means there's one shop or salon for every 884 people in the town. Tough to do good business on those stats.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I try to keep myself in trim, good-looking young man with a six-pack. I always like to look my best for GB News and other establishments and the public and my followers. But I go about once every 3 months. In fact, I'm off tomorrow. So I haven't got the money to do that. Yes, there are a number of men that like to keep themselves in trim, but the majority of these are Turkish shops that are set up. And as I said, often they're empty, do very little trade. But when you actually think of the types of money that they're laundering, it actually causes misery. It's normally importation and supply of heroin, cocaine, prostitution. Women that sometimes come to this country under false premises are the money that they're paid is put through not a legitimate business, but a business that is literally a front and cleans their money. And that money churns back out into the criminal underworld where it maintains its criminal activities.
Norman, I've seen so many reports from our viewers and listeners saying there's just been a tremendous surge in barbershops, but also vape shops and other sort of nighttime economy places as well. Now, there's one road in Salford. Its number of barbers has gone from 3 in just the last few years to over 16. Now, clearly that's not
an organic rise in the number of barbershops. It's clear that there's something strange going on here. If it's not all criminality, could this just be a consequence of mass migration, low-skilled workers, part of this so-called Boris wave of migration, millions of people coming into the country, often low-skilled in the last 5 years or so? Are they just looking for easy, low-skill work to do, and setting up a barbershop is quite a straightforward industry to get into?
Yeah, that could be partly the case, but the police are not that silly. The police will be very aware of who's in their area. They will use undercover officers, CID officers, and also even uniformed officers to keep an eye on and make some inquiries. They'll look at the types of people that are going in, vehicles that visit. They would do police national computer checks of the owners and directors of those businesses and work with HRC. So the police are on top of this. But like every other crime, you're talking about a shoplifting epidemic today, about whether people should be sent to prison. No one's going to be sent to prison. Knife crime, hardly anyone is sent to prison. Domestic violence, rape, every crime that you at GB News talk about every day, the police cannot handle. So some of these people that have sophisticated money laundering operations basically are running free at the moment and run under the radar. And sadly, some of them, not all of them or most of them, their criminal activities cause absolutely blight on other people's lives, certainly in the drugs industry.
Absolutely. Norman Brennan, thank you very much as ever. Retired police officer, have yourself a Merry Christmas. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It's a bleak picture when it comes to crime in this country.
Yeah.
But there you go. Can we actually prosecute people? Can we actually solve those crimes anymore? I think the barbers might be on your case. One of them low-skilled.
Well, I mean, hey, that's a problem. It is a really skilled occupation, but...
If you do it right,
yeah,
if you do it nicely.
And I think a lot of traditional barbers are pretty concerned that their trade is being tarnished by a lot of people coming in and just, you know, have a go Henry.
Have a go Henry.
Sort of just turning up with a pair of clippers and having a crack, but not necessarily what the trade wants to be seen front and centre.
No, but if you're in search of some winter sun, or you're an expat watching GB News, I know some of you are in sunny Spain, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello, welcome to your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. We'll see an east-west split weather-wise across southern parts of Europe over the next few days. Mostly fine in the west, more unsettled further east. Could see a few showers on Christmas Eve across the Canaries, but for much of Iberia, it's set fair, plenty of sunshine around here. And then we run into more unsettled conditions across southeastern parts of Europe. Some wind, some rain, even some hill snow in places. And that east-west split continues as we go through the Christmas period. Further unsettled weather to come in the east, generally fine the further west you are.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie,
Hello.
really good to see you this
Thank you
morning.
for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I brought some tasting samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo, just, you know. I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look,
you won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first. Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour, so...
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel.
That's my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
No, it's salty, yeah.
It's
OK,
salty.
hang on, bit more.
OK.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Crisps? Wait,
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. It's onion.
Yes, nailed it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are
Oh,
off.
you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We haven't got long left, have we?
No, Merry Christmas Britain is running out of time, but it's been a great show.
It has been, and lots of you have been in touch.
Yeah.
Lots are getting in touch about the barber shops.
Yes.
They have been noticed and noted.
Yes.
And yes, a conversation around whether the traditional barbers will be upset with the new lot and the standards.
It's a great
Perhaps
comment
a
here.
slipping.
Yes, great comment here from Rita, just in, saying that she's also concerned about the number of sort of food delivery vehicles zipping around her local area, how that suddenly sort of appeared alongside the barbers'
People are lazy.
situation.
People are lazy. They can't be asked to go down the road. I mean, do you know what I saw on Deliveroo recently? And this may just be in London. OK, this may just be in London. You can now hire a going-out dress to be delivered.
Where'd you get this dress?
Well, you could not this one, not this one. But
Hiring a going-in dress.
I mean, but that's how lazy we are now. That people can't even bother to buy clothes. They have to get them delivered in 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes?
And then they hire it, and then the
you hand it back
Deliveroo
in?
person comes and takes it back.
Oh.
Isn't that crazy?
I'm kind of
You can even hire a party dress
sounds
that
great.
last-minute needs, eh?
Yeah.
That is our society.
Here's another one from Victor. He's talking about Bashar al-Assad's wife. Potential reports of her coming back to Britain. He says that she would have had no involvement in his political or personal life. She would have simply been window dressing. I have to say, Victor, it appears that the Met Police don't agree. They launched, actually, its War Crimes Unit, a special investigation into allegations against Asma al-Assad a few years ago. So she was very much on their radar. But the question still goes on, if she would come back, would that investigation continue?
Yeah, should the citizenship just be stripped? Christopher's got in touch from Cardiff with a pretty miserable message, but I'm going to read it out anyway. Everything is stable when the country has been sunk and we have settled on the seabed. Honestly, the country is being run by clowns pretending they know what to do. Happy Christmas, Christopher.
Merry Christmas,
Happy Christmas. Yes, it's true, though, this use of the term stability as if it's always a good thing. I mean, you can be stably rubbish.
Yes, look, we clearly want something other than stability. We stagflation and
I quite want a bit
economies.
of a bit of growth is inherently not stable, is it?
Yes.
A Christmas bounce.
Christmas bounce.
Yes. Some of you will get that.
Yes.
A Christmas bounce. A Christmas bounce.
Yes. Well, what else have we been talking about today?
Any more for any more?
I think some of these. One person called us deranged earlier. Some of these are a little bit punchy. So I think we'll move on for that last comment.
Yes, some of you have to be a bit careful.
Yes. Well, I've had a great time, Emily. It's been a wonderful show. We've covered all sorts, and we've got Martin coming up next.
It's going to be another great show from him. Yeah, can you spot the elf?
Can you spot the elf?
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A lot of cloud has arrived and will continue to spread across the rest of the UK during the rest of today, bringing drizzle and hill fog, but also bringing much milder weather in time for Christmas. This warm front is the culprit. That's what's bringing the thick and low cloud to much of the UK through the rest of the day, along with outbreaks of mostly light